And all right, so welcome to Art Venture Encore Watercolor Florals with Alisa Burke. You have your beautiful kit, hopefully, if you are watching. And Alisa, can you just tell us a little bit of why you picked these specific tools for your class?
Yeah, so, and what I'm going to do too, just so everybody knows, I have two cameras, so I'm going to switch back and forth between my face and then my tutorials. So I picked these because in my world, I am somebody who likes to use simple supplies and see how far I can stretch them. And watercolors are really fun to do that. I know a lot of people get a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to painting or drawing, but it's kind of my passion as a teacher to show you really approachable ways that you can use watercolors in a variety of different ways. So we're going to be going from kind of messy. You're going to notice I have my own vocabulary for what I do. And then I'm going to take you through how you can take the messy color and pull it together to create these florals. And my classes are a little bit different. The way I teach is different because I'm one of those people that's not going to give you like an exact formula. I'm not going to go, you know, this is how you make what I made. I want to set you free to pick your own colors and make the things that, I don't know, you're interested in. And this is really a class that you can build off of. So it's tricky to teach you everything about watercolors in, 3 hours. But what I am going to be taking you through is a way that you can take the stuff I'm sharing and kind of practice and keep pushing it and going and going and going. I have lots of different examples just to show and tell of how you can push things and take them to different spaces and places. And something I will say too before we start is don't throw anything away. I'm going to show you why. When I teach here in my studio, when I teach online, I always tell everybody, you're probably going to make something you don't like if you're learning. Hang on to it. Those things can be cut up. They can be turned into tags or collage material. I'm notorious for ripping up my work and redoing it in a different way. So before we even start, I just have to say, if you make something that by the end, you're just like, I don't like this, that's okay. Just hang on to it and keep practicing. And maybe you can repurpose that in a different way moving forward in your art or in your creative projects. So I love watercolors. They're so accessible. You can toss them in your bag, your purse, take them on the go. They're really a cheap supply, even like the fancy stuff. It's really a supply that will last for like months and months, often years, a watercolor palette will. So there's kind of a lot of bang for your buck. So it's not like a normal kit where you get all these different supplies. It's really one supply that we are going to stretch in a variety of different ways. So I hope that.
So true. All of that. Thank you so much, Alisa. Yeah. We're ready for you to just take over. Okay. And me and Jamie will be moderating. So everyone that didn't get to meet Jamie, say hi, Jamie. And if you have questions, type it into the chat if you can. But if your hands are messy, we'll just try to answer things or ask questions along the way and get some good questions to Alisa just about her life as an artist and things like that as she's working.
Ask me anything.
Yeah, we are going to.
And is there a specific time there will be a break, or do we just like, if it feels like a good time to, because I'm going to give everybody time to work. And we can chat while you are working. But is that okay?
Yes, I would say, I mean, by 3:30-ish, you should probably be ready for one. So you decide, Alisa, why don't you paste it for us? Okay. And let's
no problem. Okay.
All right. Yay. So Jamie's going to put it back to speaker and we will be here to support you guys. So here you go, Alisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. So again, my name is Alisa Burke. I am an artist, teacher. I have a formal arts education. I have a degree in painting and printmaking, but I'm not interested in anything formal. I like breaking rules and showing people how they can take simple concepts and techniques and push them to get creative. And I know a lot of people, again, are intimidated by watercolors and drawing and painting. I know tons of people because I teach thousands and thousands of people every year. People get really intimidated when you bring up painting or drawing and they're like, I can't do that. And it's really my true love to show people, especially beginners or people that might not pick up a set of watercolors or a drawing utensil or anything, under that form of like formal art, to show you what you actually can do with it, with like shortcuts and little tricks and tips, as well as a way to just explore color and have fun. So I'm going to switch cameras so you can see all my samples and I can talk through what we're going to be doing. Please feel free to stop me at any point if you want me to pause and explain further or something, or if you have a specific question. But we are going to be doing what I call a loose watercolor bouquet. There's a variety of different ways to approach a watercolor painting. My camera's shaking. I apologize. I'll do my best to, let me just make sure it's not shaking because it's going to make me dizzy. Okay, sorry. Pause for shaking. Okay, we're going to be doing these loose watercolor bouquets where I'm going to be sharing with you how you can play around with really basic, messy color. And just through a couple of steps, you can bring it all together with different techniques with that brush. But you can take this concept and run with it in a variety of different ways. So you can tell I really enjoy this. This is a fun way to explore watercolor paint and how far you can take it. I do all kinds of these, but these are like the loose version. We're not going for realism. We're not going for like a composition. What I really want you all to do is feel comfortable exploring watercolors and what you can do in a very imperfect and loose way. And when I said don't throw things away, I really mean it. So this is one of my collage, like you'd call it probably an art journal, of little elements that I've cut out. So I spend a lot of time teaching and demoing. I have all kinds of stuff I would be tempted to throw away, but I end up using these little elements in collage. It's very hard to tell on camera, but these are all cut out. So these are all scraps of experiments, things that I didn't like. So again, don't throw stuff away. You can probably repurpose it in an interesting way moving forward. So I want to make sure my camera doesn't keep shaking because I'm so sorry. I don't want to make anybody dizzy. So I'm going to clear all this out of the way. These are just all the different versions of how far and how you can tweak what I'm sharing with you into like different surfaces. I mean, you can even take some of the stuff I'm sharing with you, turn it into a wreath. So I just want you to see just initially, there's a variety of different ways to apply what I'm going to share with you today. So this is what we're going to base everything off. Base everything off of is a very loose watercolor bouquet. And I'm going to leave the colors up to you. Again, I am not somebody who is interested in giving you a formula of like, now we're going to pick this color. I'm going to leave all of that up to you. I really want to just give you the foundation for something that you can then run with after this class ends. So the first thing we're going to do is explore our materials, and we have really, really simple supplies. So we've got our sets of watercolors. Again, I was using these before even teaching a class like this. We have I have two round brushes. They are size 6. Any kind of brush is going to work for this, but I actually prefer a round brush for watercolor flowers. There's just a lot you can do with that brush, and you're going to be seeing me push my brush in a variety of different ways. And then we have our tablet of watercolor paper. So before we jump into exploring our watercolors, I just want to show you how to get paper off of this. You can either work on it without ripping the paper off. I actually like working on loose paper. So I'm going to leave it up to you all. You can paint on it and then rip after you've worked. The reason you'd want to work on a block of paper is watercolors and wet media often buckle or expand, and it just keeps everything in place as you're painting. And then once it's dry, you can rip it off. I actually prefer to work on loose paper, and because I'm demoing, it's just easier for me. So the way that I get my paper off is I just stick my brush in there on the glue binding. There goes my camera shaking again. I got it fixed out for you all. And you just rip it off. I'm going to be really gentle because it's very easy to rip some edges. Okay, does that make sense? So if you want to rip off a piece, even if you've already painted on it, you're just going to stick that brush in to break the seal carefully on the edge. I'm going to make sure that makes sense. I'm going to have to move my table so I can quit shaking the camera. Pardon me. Does that make sense? I hope. All right. So again, you are welcome to work on this without tearing it off, or you can work the way I'm going to, which is just working on that loose piece of paper. So the other thing you're going to need is just a cup of water. I like to have a little paper towel or rag. I am notorious for constantly drying my brush off. This is not something you have to do, but you're going to see me do it. And it's just the way that I control how wet my brush gets. This is not something that you're going to probably figure out for your own style in like 3 hours. But this is something that over time, like every artist, every watercolor artist has their own way of doing things. I regulate my brush and how wet it is by just kind of tapping it on my paper towel. Not everybody does it that way, but you're going to see me doing that, and you do not need to do the same thing I'm doing. But that is, if you see me doing it, that's what's going on with me, is I'm just trying to regulate how wet it gets. And sometimes I like a dry brush, sometimes I like a really sopping wet brush. And as we move forward, you're going to see why I like the two and how I play off of the two. So we've got our brush, we've got our set of colors. And so what I'm going to have you start out by doing is what I do anytime I have a new supply or anytime I want to warm up. And that is really playing around with the colors in my set. So anytime I order a new set of watercolors, even if it's a set that I have used in the past, I always experiment and play around with what I got going on. Sometimes I will mix colors. Sometimes I will just use them straight out of the pan, which is what I'm going to be doing today, because I think it's the easiest thing for us to just jump in without feeling like you need to mix something specific. But I just want you to know, with this particular set, there are so many different options of colors you can come up with. I mean, you can see where I've been mixing with other projects. I've mixed up a really pretty teal. There's white in this set, so you can mix up a really light shade of basically any color. My favorites in this set is this row of kind of reds and pinks. So far, I'm like a pink connoisseur because I paint so many flowers. This is my favorite color of pink out of any set, even the really, really fancy sets that I have. It's so good. It's like a great little hot pink, and it doesn't translate super well on this camera, but you will see if you start playing around, it's quite beautiful. And then like a little coral, but these are my favorites. This is actually why I like this set so much when I'm painting watercolor florals, because you've got a lot of different pink and red options, which for me, when I'm doing florals, that's important for me. But what I'm going to set you free right now to do for just about 10, I don't know, yeah, 10 minutes, is just get some swatches on your page. Even if you've already taken this with me before, even if you already feel comfortable with watercolors, my intention is just to get you warmed up and playing with color. It can look like messy, like my little swatch experiments are incredibly messy. Some people, because again, I do a lot of teaching, are very perfect about their swatching. And, you know, they have beautiful little circles and they label the color and they do a whole big kind of situation with exploring color. We won't be doing that today. I just want y'all to get accustomed to the colors you're working with, because as we move forward, I'm not going to tell you what colors to pick for your bouquets. I am going to be leaving it up to you. And so that means I want you to know what you're working with in your set. So as you start playing with those colors, there's probably going to be a couple you're like, ooh, I like that. Make a little mental note of which ones you really enjoy, because we're going to be picking like 4 or 5 of our favorites to be building a bouquet off of. But to get started, I just want you to have fun. I'm not even going to give you a way to do this. You don't need to fill it like me. And just side note, I save all of these too. So these end up becoming like references for stuff that I'm doing. Sometimes I will label colors. I actually like cutting these up and collaging with them. I'm big on art journaling, so I will cut these up and bind them into my art journal. I will use the backside of experiments like this to get like a bang for my buck with using a piece of watercolor paper. So, we are using like 2 pages to experiment, but I want you all to know that these are even pages I don't get rid of. I repurpose them in my creative projects. But I just want to set you free right now for about 10 minutes to get messy, get colorful, just to mess around with that brush and the colors that you have in that paint palette. And as you're doing it, just make a little mental note of which ones you're like super vibing on, like which colors really just feel delicious and yummy or beautiful that you just are attracted to, because those are the colors you're going to be utilizing in our florals as we move forward. So any questions before our little 10-minute experiment?
I love this because this is so zen. Like
Super zen.
Messy blobs is so zen.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to do mine and I'm going to switch. I'm going to turn my timer on. And if 10 minutes isn't enough, we can wait too for anybody that needs to finish. We have a small enough group that it's a little bit easier to do that, but I'm going to turn my timer on. And I'm going to fill my page as well. And I do this all the time. This is like one of my favorite ways to warm up. If I am painting, I love swatching. I love seeing what I can come up with. We're not going to dive into like remixing and creating new colors, but that is something I enjoy doing with this process, is, you know, seeing how many different combinations I can come up with, how many different colors, seeing how I can create lighter shades of something in my palette. But when I teach, I always try to teach, especially, you know, when watercolors might not be something you use all the time, just show you how you can work straight from the palette and still come up with some really great stuff. So I love this palette so much too. There are some interesting yellows and kind of yellow oranges in it as well, which I don't use enough. I should use more orange because it's a good color too. But the pinks, oh goodness, I love the pinks in this palette. And I'm a messy person. I mean, I don't know how many of you know my stuff, but I'm all about making as big of a mess as possible, even if it's watercolors. So I don't mind if things blend and bleed into each other. I kind of embrace that. It's my thing. So you're going to hear me talking about imperfection and letting it just be messy a lot, because that's basically all I do when it comes to art.
Okay, and isn't it funny how like the watercolor world, there is like the perfect watercolor side, and then there's this messy blendy, just let it do what it wants side.
There's like both sides of it all. And you know what? It's like that with a lot of different mediums and you know, supplies, which is cool. I like that there's space for all of it, you know, like because I love details, and I love, you know, spending a lot of time on floral bouquets. But I really think for my brain, there's something that needs to have permission to just let it be. Like if it's, you know, like I'm already got drips all over my table, that, you know, I'm sure somebody who's like a super formal watercolor artist would be like, you're so messy, and that's fine with me. The crazy part of it all is that I have a formal background, and, you know, even when I was studying art in college, I like had no interest in any of the formalities. I was like, oh, do we have to be so perfect and clean? So it's just always been with me. My poor college teachers and professors were like, rein it in, lady. I'm like, I don't want to.
I know. And that's the thing, is we totally don't have to.
Yeah, we don't. It's art. So I'm just gonna check my time so I stay on time. The greens are really nice in this set as well. We're going to be adding like vines and leaves to our florals, so I really enjoy like a nice olive green when I am adding leaves. So there is already a really beautiful olive green in the set. Normally I will mix my own up, but I actually love this olive green, which is right over here. You know what, and what's interesting, I have 3 of these sets. 2 of them are the same, and then the other one is, the colors are in a different order. So if for some reason somebody's is in a different order, some of what I'm saying might not translate, but I love this olive green, right? It's like right here. It doesn't look that vibrant on camera, but it's great. And again, there's a shade of white, which can be mixed. And I'm a messy mixer, so sometimes I will mix directly inside the pan color, which is a big no-no, but I'm telling you, I like to break the rules. But the white can be mixed with other colors so that you can lighten it up. And that white even adds a little bit more of an opaque quality to it. So it's kind of fun to have white in a watercolor palette because you can really play around with it in a fun way. And then black, we are going to be using kind of like you would use India ink. I am notorious for using my black watercolor paint for fine lines and almost the way that you would use like an ink. So I'm always looking for watercolor sets that have a great, real saturated black, so that I can go in with the tip of my brush and do fine lines. And that's what we're going to be doing in the second half of class. And so again, you know, this isn't a commercial for Prima's set of watercolors, but it's a really good set. I just love these colors. The saturation is super good. And you can kind of push it a variety of
Tell us a little bit about India ink since you mentioned it. What is it?
You know what, I can't even tell you what the makeup of India ink is, but it's just a black permanent ink. Oftentimes, like I even have, let's see, I have a couple inks right here with me. If I can reach them. So like you can buy all kinds of different inks. This is one of my favorites. It's the Burke waterproof India ink. So that means like you could paint right back over the top of it and it won't bleed. It's got the consistency of like, I'd say almost like olive oil. So it's really beautiful for painting. You can hand letter with it. You can, you know, like I do a lot of illustration stuff, so I can get really fine and detailed. It's just a fun way to, I'm more comfortable working with a brush than I am a pen. So if you're somebody who loves to kind of like draw with a brush, it's a beautiful way to like work with real pigmented fluid materials. And this golden, it's called high flow acrylics, which it's actually permanent, like really flowy paint, so it feels like ink as well. And I often use these on my murals that I paint, and it's just a really cool way to be able to you know, work with a brush as opposed to a pen. So people use India ink for painting, for drawing, for calligraphy, that type of thing. But it's kind of fun to think of like your black shade in your watercolor palette as something that can be more like a detail tool as opposed to just like a wash. So I think a lot of times people think of watercolors being real fluid and you can wash over them, but some of those darker pigments, you can really, really use the tip of your brush to get detailed. And that black color is what I love using for those details.
I think
and you're gonna notice, oh, go ahead, sorry, Elena.
I was gonna say, I think that's a great way to explain it, that it's basically, you can do what you would do with a pen, but if you are more comfortable with a brush, which then you have that option. That's really a great way to.
And everybody's probably gonna notice, especially for the newbies out there, that your water's gonna get muddy. I kind of just let it get muddy, but I at some point will probably switch my water out. So if your water is feeling kind of mucky and it's affecting your colors, feel free to rinse it out. There's a lot of watercolor artists and myself as well, but I don't have space within my little filming area that have 2 jars of water. So there's like a clean jar and a mucky jar where, you know, you use your mucky jar to get all the paint off, and then you can use your clean jar for, you know, the painting process. But I just have 1 jar today and it's already nice and mucky, but that's okay with me. I'm okay with it. Okay, about like another minute. Do you can I take a potty break? My water has already affected me. Am I good to take a quick break while you all finish up?
Please
and
go.
Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna be really quick.
Because you drank a gallon.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Okay, we do not mind if people have to take potty breaks. Please help yourself to potty breaks as needed. Alisa is the cutest. Let's see. Where am I? How are you guys doing with the messy blobs? Are you guys good? Is anybody like struggling with them? It's kind of weird how like it does actually take practice to make good messy blobs that you feel comfortable with, but it is such a Zen process. I feel like it's really, as you sit there and make them, it just can be very relaxing actually. Is anyone struggling with their messy blobs? Whoops.
I'm coming.
You're good. You're good. No problem. Sabrina said she loves how pigmented this ink is. It's super vibrant.
It is so vibrant. It's okay.
And Tracy said she's not making messy blobs. So now I'm really curious what you're making, Tracy.
Well, we are going to make our official messy blobs next. So
Okay.
did everybody, are we good to move on to the next? I want to make sure everybody has just at least explored all the colors in the palette. So I guess give me a thumbs up, or somebody give me a thumbs up, and then we will move on. So again, nice straight.
All right, Tracy said she's making nice straight.
Nice straight even.
Ooh.
You. Okay,
I think they're ready though. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, I hang on to these. It might seem weird, but I love cutting them up. So they're also experiment on the back. If you are feeling like you're like all for the mistakes and you are not completely confident that you're going to make something right off the bat in the next 3 hours and you don't want to waste paper, feel free to turn this over and use the other side. It's absolutely workable. So I'm going to grab another blank piece of paper. So we're going to start fresh now. And what I want you all to do is to quickly and intuitively just use your gut, figure out like 4 of the colors that you liked the best. And something to keep in mind would be they need to be light enough that you can kind of water them down just a little bit. So we don't want to start with black. Let me just say, keep black and brown out of it. But think about which ones just really quickly like struck your fancy. And those are the ones we are now going to play around with what I call my little, I should patent this term, messy blobs of color. So let me switch my camera. And this messy blob of color approach is truly building the foundation of our bouquet. So we are not doing anything that looks like a flower at this point, but just hang with me and just trust me. We are just going to be doing like this. Okay, so for my newbies who have never used watercolors before, the more your brush is wet, the more kind of flowy that water is going to be. The drier the brush, it's going to be trickier to lay down a lot of color. You're going to have to constantly dip things in. So I like a combination between super sloppy wet and really dry brush. I just am kind of find a nice medium for my messy blobs of color. So mine are just, yeah, I mean, they're kind of circular. They could be like little brushy, you know, splotches. We're going messy. The only key in this is just leave a little border around your blobs, and that will enable us to have space to add like vines and branches around everything. And I'm gonna go for another color. I'm gonna go for like this orangey color. And I'm even gonna let things overlap because I love when watercolors mix and blend and what they call bleed together. So I'm gonna let some of the edges kind of touch. And you'll notice I'm dispersing my color, you know, not equally, but I am trying to kind of create this this visual interest where your eye might move around the different colors. That's kind of one of my hot little tips when it comes to even playing with color. You can kind of get away with any color combination, but if you disperse things in an interesting way, it's going to keep your eye moving around the surface. So I've got a couple, let's go with, I'll just do like a purple or something. And I am also leaving a little bit of white space in between some of them so that it will give me some room as we move forward to play around with that space. And I'm not even going to tell you, I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to do with that space. I'm just going to say, leave a little space so you won't have to overthink it all. And you'll notice my color, it's fairly light. It's not super, super saturated. It's like in between, you know, pastel and super dark. I don't want to go too dark because we're going to layer over the top of these with darker color. So I'm trying to keep it kind of lighter. I love color, so for me, it's hard not to go too wild with the color, but you'll notice it's kind of like a watered down version of my colors in the, all right, so I am just dispersing mine and I am using different shapes or different sizes, different scales. So I've got my big hot pink ones, I've got some smaller ones, and that diversity in the size is also going to come in handy as we move forward because it's going to create some really unique contrast. So maybe don't make, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but maybe try to stay away from making your blobs all the same exact size, all the same space in between. Just let yourself kind of have like a little bit of freedom in the process. You're going to notice mine are starting to like blend into each other. I'm all for that. That's what I personally want. And then I've got that great space around the edges so that I can build off of it. And so this is what it's going to look like. This is step one, building our foundation with just messy blobs of color. There's like a bunch of circles. So I am going to set you free to get your surface filled with messy blobs. And if for some reason you are like a super fast creative, you can make two surfaces. You can make multiple surfaces like this. I have watercolor journals where I will go through and just add these to pages so that over a span of time, I can just flip to one of my blob pages and then continue to work over the top of it. So we're going to be layering over the top of these. This surface will need to dry, and while your surfaces are drying, I will be demoing how you can then transform them. So take a little time and give you, this is a quick process. I'll just give you another 10 minutes to fill that space with those messy blobs of color. And then as they're drying, then I'm going to really kick things up a notch. So any questions on my blobs, my real formal word?
Yeah, your blobs are amazing. I just want you to know that you have really awesome blobs.
Your blobs are so nice.
Your blobs look so like, I like how you make your blobs, and I like the choice of blob colors. The word blobs, I'm sorry, Alyssa, it's like the word, I don't know, booger. It's really
it's funny. I know. I don't have any other description for it. I have tried to find a different word. And at this point, I'm like, it's a blob.
The blob.
It's a
All
blob.
right, you know what though? I think it would be really cool. Can you do one more sheet of messy blobs? Just
absolutely.
Maybe do another colored. Can you do some blue, purple or something? I don't know. I know you're all.
Let me do blues. I'll do blues.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So I have step outs. So I have another sheet.
Okay, right, that one's pretty too.
I'm just gonna, so let's go with, we'll do shades of blue. Okay. All right, there's a really pretty blue in here. I love this. There's like a kind of teal blue. And I'm just gonna, and blue can be tricky because I don't want to go too dark. I want to keep it light enough that I can go over the top of it. So we'll go with this pretty blue. And you'll notice I like to start out with large blobs. And that's because I'm just always looking to play with that scale. So I start off with the large ones, and I actually like these brush strokes, these little stray brush strokes are kind of my favorite because there's something very beautiful and expressive about it. We're gonna go purple. And I'm gonna go a little bit smaller. So not quite as big. And I'm just overlapping here and there over the top of the blue.
Did you tell them what size brush you're using, Alyssa?
Yes, I did. It's everybody. I mean, if they got the kit, it's a size 6 round brush. Yeah. And that's I use like a 6 or an 8 most of the time because you can really take it pretty far. I have to be working on a really large surface to get a bigger brush. So I picked this brush because moving forward, you will see it's nice to use for details. So, all right, now I'm gonna add, and I'm just working through my row of blue. I'm not even just using what's in the pan. I'm gonna do some small ones. And again, I love to overlap and let them blend together. The only kind of blending I don't like is the kind that makes the color brown, unless I'm working off of a brown palette. But you know, like if you start mixing like 5 colors together, like red, green, blue, and purple, it's probably going to turn to the color brown. So just stay away from letting things mix for more than like 2 or 3 colors, because that's when it can get tricky. So I'm really comfortable letting things overlap. But if I had like 1,000 colors on here, I'd be really careful about what was blending together because I don't want to lose that yummy color. So do a couple more little darker ones. Okay. And then again, I have that relatively, like my white space around isn't completely equal. I know there are probably people out there, I'm married to one of them, who would want to measure this space to make sure it's like all equal. I have no interest in that, but I just like eyeball it and just keep some sort of space around those blobs. So there we've got 3 different versions of those blobs that literally just look like watercolor polka dots. Pretty unsuspecting. And this is just a fun way to explore messy color. I am an artist who enjoys, again, both sides of the coin. I like being really messy and expressive, and then I like bringing things together with details. And so these types of surfaces, these are the things I like to do when I'm excited, maybe I'm mad. It's a way to kind of get expressive with color and the movement of your hand. I think so often in art and like a lot of creative projects, you can feel really tight and detailed and stress about perfection. And so steps like this are really important in my own process because I always have to fit in these moments for expression. And color and expression to me. So when I say expression, it's like the movement of my hand or color connected to the way I'm feeling. These little moments are perfect for that. And as an artist with all of my work, I am always trying to set up those moments for myself where I'm able to have these really messy surfaces. And then I have surfaces like this I can layer over the top of with my details when I have more time. Surfaces like this are great if you're somebody that's limited with time and you only have like chunks of creative space in your schedule. So this is something you could do in 10 minutes and get your creative fix in, and then the next day revisit it and the next day revisit it. So when I teach and when I set up tutorials for people, it's really important for me to bring things together so that it feels approachable and it feels like something you can connect with, you know, your day, your emotions. Color is such a beautiful way to express yourself. And sometimes just slopping color on a page, there's something really powerful. It can be healing. It can be relaxing. It can be a great way to unwind. And so I love setting these types of moments up. I mean, it's like I would sit here and make like 50 of these just because it feels good to my brain. And then again, as we move forward, you're going to see what else my brain likes with these, but I like to encourage people to set these moments up because it's a great way to play with color and get used to what watercolors feel like on a page without the pressure for it to be perfect or look like something at the initially. So is everybody, if I'm going too fast, let me know.
I love hearing all the crazy stuff that goes on in your head, Alisa.
My head's a crazy place. It's really crazy. Well, it's interesting too, because being an art teacher, it's been so interesting because I didn't want to be a teacher when I started out. I wanted to just be a gallery artist with work. I mean, my work back then doesn't look like anything I do now. And I really had to get comfortable like explaining what's going on in my head, because so much of it's really intuitive. But when you teach, you have to break down the process so that people, especially people who might be beginners or new to, you know, creativity, like how do you explain like what the color blue means to you? You know, like you have to like figure out words to capture how you can use color when you're teaching versus when you're just making art. Like to me, I would just be like, blue feels good today. Like it just feels good to my soul. But when you're teaching, you have to figure out how to explain that so people can, you know, pull that experience into their own process where it's like, okay, what feels really, really comforting to you? Pick that color, and people have to like think about what blue looks like or what comfort looks like when they start picking colors. It's interesting. So, and it can sound a little bonkers, but when I'm working on my art without having to explain it, it happens really naturally and intuitively. And it's because you just practice it over and over again. So,
well, the other thing, Alisa, is you're really giving people permission as a teacher. 100%. And so you want to do that really openly and authentically. And I love that you do that. So I think they're ready though, if you want to move to the next.
All right, here we go. So you all are going to let your messy blobs dry. I have now a lot of them. I'm going to grab one that's really, really dry. And I'm going to grab, okay, here we go. I'm also going to grab my little swatch page just so I can first show you what we are going to experiment with. And I may raise my table so that you can get up close without my computer falling off. 1 second. Okay. So what we are going to start doing is turning these blobs into flowers. And I'm going to share with you like 2 or 3 of my favorite super, super easy brush strokes, movements of your hand, and ways to add details with those watercolors. And it's gonna feel the exact opposite of what we just did. It's not gonna feel messy. It's not gonna feel like super expressive. It's gonna feel a little bit like drawing, but I don't wanna freak you out. So just hang with me, don't get scared because I said the D word. We are going to first, and you don't need to do anything except watch me, and then I'm gonna set you free, and this will be the longest chunk of time I'm gonna set you all free. But I am going to start using my brush like a drawing tool. So instead of pressing down like this, I am going to be using the tip of my brush as best I can. And as a seasoned artist, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't always get it right. There are times where I slip up and I don't do it the way that I'm intending. So do not be hard on yourself if you don't get this the first time. But the way this looks is keeping your brush fairly dry. So I've got my brush very saturated with dark color. I'm not going to dip it into water unless it gets too dry because I want to use this like a drawing tool. And I am going to start using the tip of it and different types of pressure to start adding a layer over the top of these messy blobs. So if at some point your brush is feeling really, really dry, you're just gonna give it like a little tiny dip into the water. If you dunk it in, it's gonna get sopping wet and it's gonna be hard to control these details. But if you give it like a little dip and then tap it on the side if it feels too wet and get it super saturated. This is why I always have a paper towel so I can just do a little test and go, okay, yeah, I'm just wipe that off. And then I can really use the tip of it for details. Okay, so I know I just repeated myself, but I want to make it clear. We're going to smaller, tinier details with the tip of that brush. And before you all dive in, before I give you the cue to get going, after you've watched me, feel free to use this page to just experiment. Just see what it feels like just to use the finer edge or the finer tip of that brush with a drier brush. So don't feel like you need to dive into what I'm doing. You are welcome to use your swatch page to experiment. But what we are going to start doing, and I'm going to show you 2, maybe 3 of my favorite ways to transform these blobs. So this is truly the foundation of our flowers. This is like the background color, and we are looking for a variation of color, some light color layered with dark color on top, which gives almost this illusion of there being depth to these really loose, basic flowers. And the way that you're going to do this is, again, keeping these fairly light, but then going back into them with a darker color. So the first little flower I'm going to show you, and I can repeat this over and over again. So please tell me if you want me to repeat it. I want to zoom in. I'm going to get even closer. But the first one I'm going to show you is just a brush stroke flower where we are using the tip of our brush and then pushing on our brush to create a petal. So again, I will repeat this a million times if I have to. So tip of our brush and pushing it down and then letting that little tip end the petal. And I'm using these light blobs of color as my foundation. Some of them are wonky, some of them are oblong. I don't care. I'm going to work within the shape because then I can layer over the top of it in a really interesting way so that there's this depth happening. So I'm going to do it again. Bloop. And I have sound effects too. I'm around a kid way too much because I have sound effects for my painting. So I'm really using my brush, all of my brush, with a drier type of consistency. So I'm using the tip of it and just dragging it and then pushing it down as I drag and then letting it end with the tip of my brush. I already know my flowers are not going to be perfect. I actually really embrace imperfection. I kind of like sometimes when flowers are wonky because in nature, they are not always perfectly uniform. A lot of them are, but a lot of them are not. Okay, you see how those brush strokes look? And this is going to be the same stroke that we use at the end for our leaves. So just put that in your database. Okay, so we've gone straight over the top of that blob and turn it into something that has like this push and pull. It's got a light shade of kind of a pinky color, and then we've got this darker shade over the top of it, which is the beginnings of our bouquet. And you can really play around and have so much fun with these different brush strokes. I'm gonna actually add some in between, and these ones are just like a smaller stroke. So same thing, starting with the tip of my brush, putting pressure, and then ending the best I can with the little tip of my brush. These ones are a little bit shorter. And I'm using that blob as like what I work within. So it starts to feel and have the illusion of there being something stacked on top of it. So I like to finish things off with a flower like this with just a little black dot in the middle. It doesn't have to be black, but it's the easiest way to get a lot of really good contrast. And there you've got the beginnings of your bouquet. So should I do another one with those brush strokes? You all want to see it again before I move on to the next type of flower?
Yes, I think another example would be great. Okay,
so here we go. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to repeat it. So I'm going to pick these big ones to have my little brush stroke petal flower. So again, starting with the tip of my brush, pressing down. And this, I'm not gonna lie. This takes some practice. It is very possible you might not even get it today, but I promise you, after a couple tries, and again, 3 hours is a shorter amount of time. I've been doing this for a ridiculous amount of years. So for me, I could probably do it blindfolded, but it's going to take a couple shots. So if you get on the first shot, you are awesome. If you don't, you're awesome still, because it just takes a little bit of practice. So don't be discouraged if for some reason you can't get it. I remember teaching this one year in my studio, and one of my students, she worked for 4 days, and it wasn't until right before she had to go get in her car and drive to the airport.
It finally clicked and she was so excited. So some people, it just takes a little bit longer just to practice this over and over again. If you don't even want to dive into your little blobs, you can practice this movement and stroke on scrap paper over and over again, or you could just go for it. You know, I'm one of those go for it kind of gals where I'm just like, who cares? Just go for it. See what happens. See how that changes that blob. So you've got the blob in the background and you've got those darker colors on top. I'm going to add my little black dot. Okay, I'm going to do another one. The color is a little bit weird. I'm going to see if I can change my color for a second. Oops. Just so maybe you can see. I have it as HD. Okay. I don't know if it'll work. No, it doesn't, but let me do one more. One more. Same thing. And you don't have to use the same shade. You know, you could like use the color blue over the top of it. I mean, you can really get creative with how you do this. The bigger the blob, the longer that brush stroke is going to feel. So you can really drag it. And you can really experiment with the pressure you put on your hand as well. So a different pressure is going to have different results. I kind of have my preferred pressure. I know for me, I have found that this is kind of a subjective process. You know, what works for me, someone else might have a different pressure they put on their brush and it's going to look and feel different. But for me, sometimes too, it's a little bit easier to go fast. It's hard to slow it down. But the slower you go, you're probably going to have more control as you just learn how much pressure you're comfortable with. Okay, let me put a black dot. Any questions before I jump into, I got to change this, into the next flower, which is a rose. Sorry. I want to pause for any questions. And again, you're all, yes, it is like brush lettering. You are absolutely correct. Is this going to work? I have this on HT. It doesn't matter. I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure you can see it the best possible way. Okay. So we're starting to build that bouquet. So we've also got white space in here and we've got our other blobs that we can start working over the top of. So there's a lot of area to play with. So the next one I'm going to show you is a rose. And I'm going to use an orange to go over the top of this little, it's like a yellow splotch, but I'm going to go over the top of it with an orange. And the reason why my color and my brush strokes are so crisp and clear is because I've let all these blobs dry. So we are painting right over the top of another surface. We are, you know, layering over the top of that color. If this was all wet, things would blend and bleed and blur and move around, which is kind of cool. We're not doing that today, but because you've let things dry, and because I'm taking up time showing you this while yours dries, things are going to be really crisp and clear, and it's going to feel a little bit different than, you know, if it were wet, where you don't have as much control. But when it's dry, you have a lot of control. So we're going to do a rose, and this is my simple version of a rose. We are going to start with like a little spiral or a little comma, a little messy comma. Let's get even closer for you all. And then we are going to pull that comma around into a spiral and just flick the edge out with the tip of the brush. So you've got that really, really kind of fat little area. And then as you pull your brush off the page, you get that really thin area. So you've got this really interesting, another like little comma type of shape. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not reloading my brush. I'm not dipping it. I have enough on here. I could probably go again. So I'm going to do the same thing. Bloop. Do another little comma. And I am now, my water is not in the shot, but I'm just going to give it a quick little dip. And I'm going to do the same thing. This time around, I'm going to see how far around I can go. I'm going to go a little bit farther. So I've got a really long curvy comma. I'm now going to dip into my pigment, maybe give it another tiny dip. My brush is starting to dry out just a bit. And I'm just going to continue to do the same thing and build this little spiral stacked petals. And you can absolutely have so much fun with this. You'll notice my brush is dry because you can see it dragging a little bit. I actually like that. I like to do that actually quite a bit. I like the way it looks. But I'm going to wet it again. I'm going to just layer over the top of some of these edges of my petals. And I'm going to pull it right into that white space. So I've got that great white space in between some of my shapes, which means I can pull color in there just to take up that space, and it's going to have some vibrant appearance to it because it's going right over the top. And I'm actually just going to layer right over the top of this as well. You can make these huge, you can make them small, but that is a really simple way to do a little rose. The easiest way I can describe it is it's basically just like this little disconnected spiral. We'll do another one right here. And the trick is just picking a color that's darker or more saturated than that background. So I'm doing a little spiral, little half comma. I guess it's not much of a spiral. And then we're gonna play around with the pressure of my brush. So pushing it down and then just starting to stack or just, I wouldn't say stack, but like start building around. And you can reverse, like I'm going to the left, but you could go to the right if you wanted on your flowers. And you can do little short strokes, or you can do really big long strokes. There are so many ways you can mix this up. I feel like there's not a right or wrong way. I feel like it's kind of, you kind of can't go wrong with it. And you just start stacking what would be a petal. So we're thinking of these as petals. The way I like to finish these off is adding something a little bit darker to the middle. It could be brown, it could be black, and I just drop in a little bit of color just so that it pulls your eye in. I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I just want your eye to feel like, okay, this is a spiral and it's pulling my eye into the middle. And that's just a really quick way, little shortcut way to add some kind of, you know, interest to the middle of that flower. Do y'all want me to do another rose in a different color? Maybe I will. I'll just decide.
Yeah, okay. Do another one. It's so helpful to watch you making it. So yeah, please.
So I'm going to do another rose. I'm actually going to do a blue. Actually, we'll go blue here. And this one's going to be smaller, and I'm going to go in with a dark blue. And I'm sitting weird at my desk, but I'm going to see if I can. Let me just show you how I'm sitting, because now I feel like a little kid sitting at my desk. My table's like way up high. So, okay, that's what I've been working with over here. So if I can't get it right in the first try, I'll do another one. I'm not used to painting with my table as high. So I'm going to actually try to do finer lines, like smaller lines, with using kind of more of the tip of my brush because I'm working on a smaller one. So I just want to show you that you can take the same concept and just change it, tweak it a little bit. So I'm going to start with that little spiral. And then pull things through. And so this time I'm trying not to put tons of pressure. I'm trying to keep my lines a little bit smaller. And that's going to create this really interesting diversity. There's like one with kind of bigger strokes and then one with smaller strokes. It starts to break up that space and things feel quite interesting. And I'm just going to loop it around. I dipped my brush in paint for the first time. And this time around, I'm just trying to focus on using more the tip of my brush and having lighter pressure as I move it around. I'm going to dip it just in the top of my water. And then I'm gonna let it overlap a little bit. I like letting things overlap. To me, it's like kind of an interesting way to let things feel like they're kind of stacked and layered. Okay, so you can tell too, mine's a little bit wonky. It's a little oblong. I love that. That's what I'm going for. I'm not going for like these perfect circles, but you'll notice that blob suddenly has this variation between a light background and the dark details on top, which really adds this kind of trick for your eye. And then to top it off, I'm just going to go back in and kind of darken up the middle. I have some darker strokes around the edges, which it's fine. Just darken things up. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, I think it does. And I can go back and do it over and over again at any point, but I'm going to show you just another way to transform those blobs. And this one's so simple. This one is like, I should have started with this one, but I wanted you to feel like kind of scared and then go, oh, that's simple. So we are going to just take a blob and we are going to not do a whole lot to it. Wait, let me answer a question. What if your blobs are dark?
Yeah.
So it's okay if your blobs are dark. It's going to depend on like how dark they are. You can absolutely get away with it this first round of just playing and experimenting, but moving forward, the lighter your blobs are, the easier it's going to be to create that contrast. But I would just say, just pick a really, really dark color to go over those dark blobs. You can also re-wet your paper. So you can also go back in and kind of get things wet and take a rag and pull some of that pigment off. You can lighten things up a little bit that way. But I will say moving forward, the lighter the blobs are, the easier it is to create like this contrast. But sometimes, I mean, I've got one right here I had really dark blobs. And I just embraced it. Like I just went back over it with something really dark. So I would say let this just be kind of an experiment, and then figure out if it works better for you to go lighter versus more saturated. And I can speak more to that after too. Okay, so I'm just going to go in and just drop in like some little polka dots. And I'm using black. And when I do like these little guys, I'm thinking it's like a poppy or something that's kind of, you know, I think of flowers. I'm so lucky to have a beautiful garden in my yard and my mom's yard. Like when I look at flowers and I squint my eyes, this is what I'm channeling when I work this way. So, you know, what do you see when you squint your eyes? It kind of looks like a blob with a dark center. And so you can get really creative with just dropping in a spot of color here and there. I even like to take it a step further and even outline the edge of it a little bit. So I'm not doing anything with petals or stacking and layering those petals like we would with like a rose or a ranuncula. This is really just making use of that blob. So sometimes I'll do little polka dots. Sometimes I will outline things, and I actually outline the blob. Even if it is wonky or oblong, I just go straight for outlining and giving it a nice dark edge. You don't always have to use black, but I like to go in sometimes and just use that darker shade and then give it a drop of a little black polka dot in there. So at this point, it's looking a little bit wonky, but things are starting to transform a little bit. Any questions before I keep going? I feel like I have. No?
One of the things I love about your class is that, you know, there is this practice time that's required in order to move to the next step. And so you can keep talking and teaching, and that the students' minds are still like going and really trying.
I want to make sure I'm not going too fast either. So I'm about getting very close to then just giving you all time to work for a while, and then I'll work on mine. But another way that you can do this is you can kind of go back in. I'm addicted to my black, the color black. I just like adding details. So as things start to dry, I like to go back in and add even more little teeny weeny, like not overdoing it, like a line here and there details. So it's going to be really subtle, but just giving it a quick little thin stroke here and there, which as I work through this, you're going to watch me do that. Again, using my brush a little bit like you would a pen. And if for some reason you are more comfortable with the pen, you can draw flowers over the top of these blobs, which I am notorious for doing, as well as grabbing a permanent Sharpie or a micron drawing pen. And instead of, adding tiny details like this with your brush, you can go over the top of it with a pen. So I just want, and I'll show you all some examples at the end of class of how I've done that. So I just want you to know there's lots of different ways that you can approach kind of these blobs in that color. So these are the 3 little flowers that I think are the easiest to create if you're building a bouquet. I want to set you all free to play around with these, and I'm going to work through mine, and I can babble on and on if you want me to, or just give you some silence, doesn't matter to me. But just know that we are going to be adding vines and leaves, which at the very end completely transform this entire thing. And I do like to keep some of this white space showing. Just know that there's, yes, I absolutely keep this in here. That is a question I get asked a lot. So you will notice as I work over the top of mine, I let some of this just show through. And as we finish things off with leaves, you'll see why I like to hang on to some of that. So is there any questions?
I love your pen work. I love watching you do things with the pen.
Yeah, I love working with a pen. I love a brush. A brush is my favorite, but pen work is also super fun too. So now your blobs should be dry enough so that things are quite saturated and you have more control. So I'm going to set you free. It's 3 o'clock. I'm going to give you time. I have a little schedule in front of me. Yeah, I'm going to give you time. I don't want to like make you rush through this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint while you all are ideally starting to work over the top of your blobs. And again, I'm only showing you 3 different ways to do this because I think that's pretty digestible in the amount of time we have. But there are so many different ways to do watercolor flowers. There are so many different versions, but I'm giving you literally what I think are the 3 most accessible, especially if you're new to watercolors or flower painting. These are a great place to start. And then you can really set yourself free, getting creative with different types of shapes and flowers. So feel free if you have any questions, or you want to see me repeat something or do it in a different color. I will absolutely do it.
Well, while you are painting and sharing this love of watercolor florals, why don't you tell us, how do people find your classes?
So like, you mean, where are they, or?
Well, right now your classes are available on your website.
Yeah, so you can find them in my shop. I have like over 100 classes that you can take at any time. Most people find me right now, most people hang out on Instagram. So that's where people usually find the links to my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm over on YouTube. I'm everywhere. I have a Patreon community.
That's what I was going to get to. So
yeah,
you have a Patreon community.
I do. I have a small Patreon community, and it's a lot different than other stuff I share. It's lots of long form videos, so many platforms, like the algorithms don't like long content, unfortunately, but I know a lot of my students and people that like my classes want things long form where things are not sped up and they can see me create in real time. So Patreon is where I share a lot of long form stuff, as well as like these behind the scenes little monthly vlogs of our life and stuff I don't share publicly actually over there. So yeah, I'm in all of the places and spaces.
Yeah, you kind of have to be right now.
Oh my gosh, it's exhausting too. It's like all of these platforms want you to stay on there they don't want you leaving.
Yeah. But they like have all these algorithms you have to figure out.
Yep.
And to make it worth your while.
Yeah.
To create the content for them. And
yeah, it's a lot.
It is. It is so much.
It can be really exhausting, you know, to feel like you're constantly having to perform for the algorithm. But
yes, yeah, they do mess with you because you're like, how did that not get any hits?
Yeah,
you hit, and then this thing that I posted, which is just gibberish.
Yeah, it's
sometimes the most nonsense stuff is the stuff that gets the most showings from Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, it's so wild. I don't use Facebook anymore, really. But I just, you know, I more use the Instagram platform, but it's definitely, I've figured out my own, like what does well. So I know kind of how to not hack the algorithm, but I know what will probably be good. But then there's times where I just don't feel like doing it. It's like, I don't want to do that. Just so it can be seen. So
yeah, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
But you have a big following and a big community. And obviously when we open back up, you'll start doing your studio classes again, right?
I think so. I'm super, I'm just really flexible right now. Cause right now I'm actually enjoying, I mean, I miss having, like, again, before we started, I miss having like real humans in my studio, but it's actually been a really nice break because as you know, Elena, it is so intense having events and, you know, like my staff is me, my husband, and my mom, you know, like, so it's like when we do have them, it's so much work and it's so stressful. I have people that are coming from like Switzerland, all kinds of places, and they're coming to my little hometown. And I feel so responsible for everybody's experience that I found like this year, I'm like, oh man, that was stressful. Like, you know how that goes where you're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much pressure, or if someone has a food allergy. And so I'm excited for human contact creatively, but I'm okay if for some reason, you know, I do it differently, you know, like maybe
I think that's what the whole point of this pandemic was. The universe was letting you know, like, there are things you can let go of. And I mean, as I've done events for all these years, I started being, in the beginning, I'd be like, well, I'll book their hotels, I'll put them with roommates, and da 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 da. And in the end, you're like, okay, here's the hotel, here's the link, you book your hotel.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it is a lot to do. So I mean, I miss it, but I'm also like, okay, this has been a nice break because it can be a lot of pressure. And
because really it's about the art and creativity in the community. And when the little things like food allergies get involved, it takes away from what you're really trying to do and trying to create for people.
Yeah, exactly. You know, one year I had somebody who she had an extreme peanut allergy, which my mom does too. So I really understood it, but she couldn't have like peanuts being opened in the same space. And so I had to make sure nobody brought any peanut products into my studio because my studio is so small and we don't have like some kind of central air, anything like that. I was so afraid for this lady the whole weekend. I'm like, are you okay? Is everything okay with you? Because I was very paranoid. You want people to be okay.
Yeah. And really you're here to have an art experience. So it's when you do retreats and in-person events, but I mean, I personally cannot wait until we can have in-person events, but I'm really, really social.
Yes.
So for me, it's like, I just really miss that in-person interaction, but at the same time, I am fine with it right now. I've been able to spend so much time with my son and, you know, reacquaint my relationship with my mother because of the way that she's helped me with Devin. And so, it's been great, but, we have Art Venture.
I mean, we have technology, so it's like a game changer. I mean, I grew up just like you, Elena. Like, I mean, I grew up before the internet and after the internet. So it's like, I think about like, oh my gosh, this is amazing to be able to have a plan B, you know, during this time. Because of technology. So I'm pretty thankful, but it's been it's been interesting. That's for sure.
So does anyone have questions? I mean, you're seeing her fill this page in with these beautiful flowers, and they're not done, obviously. She's still going to go in and do some things, but it's fun to watch you do the highlights too, Alyssa, because it's so intuitive for you. But does anyone have questions, or how are you guys doing with these flowers? And is anybody really struggling?
Yeah, let me know.
Is anybody wanting to throw their paintbrush out the window? Like, we don't want you to be frustrated. We want this to be fun. Let us know. Jamie, how are you doing?
I think it just takes practice. I know the first time I did this, I was so frustrated at trying to get that rose comma thing. And it took me like, I swear, like 20 flowers, and then somehow it just clicked.
It clicked, yeah.
You know?
And that's how, this is what is a little bit different from like a project where you have a kit. And I think there's space for both. I love both versions of creating, but this is one of those things that is truly meant for tomorrow, honestly, if I'm being really honest, and the next day and the next day, where you have the foundation of kind of the basics, and then you can really put, the time into playing with it. Because, again, I've taught this so many times, and it's so cool to see this up front in my studio, because everybody's roses look completely different. And it's so cool. They don't look like mine. And I'll walk around the room and I'm like, ooh, how did you do that? And, it's super cool to see people put their own twist on stuff. And that's why I'm super passionate too about not giving like this really exact formula when I teach, because I think it's so important to come up with your version, because your version's going to be specific to you. It's going to be like your own little style of rose, so it is kind of a fun way, but it does take practice. That is for sure.
Okay, very good. Tracy said she's having problems with the roses, but now I have to deal with the cat. So I don't know if the cat is walking on Tracy's paper.
Uh-oh.
Did the cat run out the window? I don't know where the cat is, but Tracy, you're welcome to ask questions, and please ask Alyssa if you need her to slow down or redo or anything like that. So the way that you've chosen these colors here, you are not using the exact same colors as you laid down in your messy blobs.
Not really. I mean, I'm keeping it as close as I can, but no. And I actually am using a different, I think this was the one I did on camera today, this one and this one, but I prepped this one beforehand. So the colors are a little bit off, but no, you know what? I like to go over the top of my colors with different colors. So there's really no rules for how you address the color. You could go over the top of purple with red, you could go over the top of all this with like black if you wanted. You can really have fun with it. So no, I'm not sticking really close to it. I'm kind of giving it a little bit of room to be loose with my color. So.
And you don't turn the paper?
I would if I wasn't on camera. I feel like it might be a little bit confusing. I would if I was sitting here by myself, probably turn it a little bit more. But I do like having like an up and down for my style. So when I flip it, for the way I do brush strokes, you'd be able to tell. So I don't personally flip it, but you could. You absolutely could.
Got it.
Because it might be easier, for your hand, or if you're waiting for something to dry. But I personally don't flip it, but you know me.
Yeah.
There's no rules, so you can flip it.
You can flip it. Love it.
Well, I don't know if we've asked this question already or not. Alyssa, how long have you been doing watercolors?
Oh my gosh, probably since I was like a kid. I remember taking a watercolor class. I've been making art since I was a kid and kind of always wanted to be an artist. So my parents had me take all these community classes and stuff. So I remember taking a watercolor class when I was really young, and then my grandma worked in watercolors. And so it was always something that was pretty comfortable for me. It wasn't until I got to college that like I discovered oil painting and acrylic painting. And I was, you know, I'd been working in watercolors. I'm like, ooh, acrylic paint, this is amazing. So watercolors are something that like I always kind of come home to. They're perfect for my art journal and like working, you know, like in bed and like watching TV, that kind of thing. Because acrylic paint is so messy and it just requires a lot of setup and cleanup. For me, watercolors are where like I experiment with ideas because it's a lot more, you know, easy to control in a variety of different settings. And then a lot of times I'll take these ideas in watercolors and apply them to like an acrylic painting or, you know, other projects with different materials. But yeah, I think I've been painting with watercolors since I was like, probably like 9 or 10. I think I took a class. Thank goodness for parents, my parents who were like, this girl wants to be an artist. Okay, let her take art classes. So it was kind of cool.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty lucky. My parents are artists too, so I'm pretty lucky that, you know, I was around it my whole life. But yeah, quite a while. I think since I was a kid using watercolors. And I'm not really interested in, you know, I've taken a lot of formal watercolor classes and it just doesn't interest me. I like I like breaking the rules and, you know, I mix high-end and low-end watercolors. I mix watercolors with acrylic paint. I'll do anything with them. So, which is kind of a fun thing to do too. Break those rules. That's what I say. Which is funny because I don't break rules anywhere else in my life, but just art. not much of a rule breaker unless it's with art.
Well, they always say once you know the rules, you can break them.
Exactly. Okay. And the only reason I'm working a little bit quicker than I normally would, only because I want to get this to a point where I can show you how to even pull it together even more. So I am somebody that enjoys working fast. I wouldn't probably normally work this fast, but I want to make sure we have time so I can show you vines and leaves and just a few other tricks. So I'm trying to work quickly. So I can, okay. And it is 3:30. So I guess, Elena, whenever you think anybody might need a break, I'd say like before we do our vines and leaves would be a great time to take a break. Maybe not quite yet, but before we jump into that.
I would say, so you want to wait a little bit?
I mean, I'm just like, the next step is going to be kind of opposite of what we're doing now.
Mhm.
So anytime you feel like it's appropriate, I'm cool with it. So.
Okay. Well, it's just about 3:30. So if you'd like to, I mean, you're just about filled up your page there, Alisa. So if you want to like give them a little pause, we can do that. You guys want to do that? Let's take a 10-minute and I will actually push the pause button on the record. So it'll just take you off camera, Alisa, which will be nice for you to just.
Look, I can't stop though. Look at me. I just can't stop painting, so.
Keep going.
Finish mine off.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that's fine with me because I want them to have enough time to at least get your bouquet halfway done by the end of class. I don't feel like I want to push you to finish the whole thing if you don't want to, but I got to get mine to the point where I can show you how you can keep going. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good. You guys, why don't we take a 10-minute break and I will just pause. Well, are you going to keep painting, Alisa? Because
I'll leave it while you pause.
I'll pause so that woohoo. All right.
So
you, girl.
Before I jump into a couple more things, I'm just going to show you all the brush stroke petal approach again. I'm going to see if I can get it from a different angle, just so those of you that feel like it's challenging, again, yes, practice, but it's okay to put your twist on it. It doesn't have to look like mine. Let's just do it again. And let me see if I can see how creative I can get with this. Okay, so I'm going to go really close. Let's see. All right. So I have just light floating across the surface pressure. And then I just squish it down. See how my brush is squishing? You can see like all those bristles all sticking out. And then as I pull it away, I lighten up my pressure at the very edge. Obviously not perfect, but that's the motion that I personally do over and over again. So light floating, and then I smush it like I'm pressing it down and then lightening up. But you can absolutely do squiggly lines. So, I mean, something I really enjoy doing, again, I just showed you all 3 really basic ways to do it, but oh my goodness, you can like go with that blob and just go straight for like squiggles and more of like a light, thin, kind of airy petal happening. And I do this all the time. So this is another one. I mean, I wasn't gonna overwhelm you with too many versions of a flower, but I don't know why my light is getting weird. And then you just like drop something in the middle. So if for some reason those brush stroke petals are just a little bit too much, it's okay to embrace kind of playing around with how you approach those brush strokes. I need to adjust my lights because it's kind of getting too bright in here for my video. Sorry. Let's see. It's so bright. Okay. So I say embrace it as you're practicing. It is absolutely perfectly fine. If those brush strokes, you know, they're just going to take some practice, but have fun with messing around with the way that you move your brush too. This is a fun way to incorporate, you know, playing with that brush and playing with pressure within, you know, one of your little bouquets. So
Gina says that she's having a hard time getting thin lines.
Okay, so the thin lines are just a light hand on the tip of that brush. So this little tip right here, like I don't shape it with my hand, but you know, if you really want to see how tiny it can get, you can use your hand to shape it, but you're just going to want to use these bristles at the very, very end. So I just dipped it in my pigment and I'm just literally no pressure. I'm just letting that teeny tiny, you know, like it's not even all the bristles. It's like half of them actually when I look at my brush. And I'm just lightly letting it almost float on the surface. I'm not pressing anything down. So if I press down, it's going to look thicker. But if I let it float along the surface and just drag lightly those little bristles at the top of your brush, you're going to get finer lines. And then, you know, how wet your brush is going to affect it too. So if it's sopping wet, you'll have less control. So I like to keep my brush relatively dry. I don't do too much dipping in my water when I'm using the tip of my brush because often that water will kind of drip to the edge. So I try to keep it dry if possible. But for me, it's literally just letting it just lightly drag across the surface. So I'm going to real technical approach here. Hey, holding my paper while I paint. It's just, I'm literally like, it's so light. I don't know. To me, it almost feels like putting on eyeliner. This is going to be a very weird analogy, but you know, like if you press really hard on your eyeliner, you're going to hurt your eye. So you kind of have to have a light hand about it. It's just having a very light approach. And it takes practice. That's why I truly like to think of what I'm sharing with you all as a foundation that you can run with and just take the basics And, you know, a few sessions of practice are probably going to get you really accustomed to how much pressure your hand can use when working this way. Because I think we're all different when we're painting and drawing and creating. I have a pretty light touch when I am painting. And, you know, if I want something even lighter, I will hold my brush differently. You can hold it real close even to the actual brush to give yourself more control, or you can hold it, you know, way far down and you're gonna have less control, but you're gonna be more expressive with that line. So, Gina, I hope some of that feedback can help, but if it doesn't help, let me know and I can try to address like what is happening with you doing it. I'm willing to watch you too if anybody needs that as well. But yeah, it's just a really light hand. I'm not putting any pressure on my brush whatsoever. I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
I think that was really helpful. It's a great explanation.
Okay, so before I jump into leaves, or if anybody has any questions before I jump into anything new, just let me know. I'm gonna grab a couple of things. And Gina, if you keep struggling, let me know and I will pause and do what I can. So I just want to show you all that before we move forward, just how, so like this right here started off as blobs. And instead of using watercolors to add my details, this is one where I drew over it. So we're not doing this, and I'm not showing you because I want to confuse you, overwhelm you, but I do want to show you that this approach can be applied to a variety of different tools and materials. So while we are using our brushes to create these lines, yes, Gina, okay. You know, you can use, I like a Sharpie. I hope the Sharpie works. You can do the same thing. So instead of using your brush strokes, you can actually draw those petals. Same approach. You know, so if for some reason somebody out there is like, okay, I like this concept, but the brush thing, I'm not getting it. You can go back in and start drawing over the top of these blobs. It's such a fun way to combine color and I would say more of like a doodling approach maybe to begin with, but you can get really detailed. And again, this is how this surface started, with just these big messy blobs of color and then me transforming those blobs with a pen. So again, I'm showing you that only because I want you to see that if for some reason the brushes aren't clicking and you're like, okay, I can't do this, this makes me unhappy, you know, it's stressing me out. This is an approach that you can take with a pen over the top of those blobs. So I will fill my watercolor journal or an art journal with messy blobs, and I move forward with drawing over them or painting over the top of them like we are in this little class. But I just want to show you that approach of like those lines, you know, same thing, squiggly lines. You can start outlining your blobs. I don't want to confuse everybody by turning on you with a pen, but I feel like it's important to show you that you can take this approach and really play around with it, start outlining things and adding, you know, just simple things in the same way that we're doing with our brush. So that is just so you know, if you've got pages of these blobs, you want to experiment with stuff, it's absolutely possible to use different tools and materials with those things. So, all right, we are going to start on some leaves. I'm going to grab a scrap of paper. So I think flowers are really pretty, but I think leaves and vines just give context. It just pulls everything together. So those of you that feel a little bit uncomfortable with that petal brush stroke, this is probably going to feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. And it's just another one, it's just going to take practice. So I like to use the tip of my brush to create branches, vines, and I just kind of go for it. I like loopy lines, woo, you know, like any kind of line can be turned into some sort of a branch, vine, that type of thing. And you can keep it as just a line, but you can also add leaves to those vines. So let's get close. And this is the same approach we used with those petal flowers, but this is gonna feel like a shorter little twitch of your hand. So just tapping the tip of your brush and going bloop, bloop. I don't know why I'm making out noises, but it does feel like just a little, like a little flick of the wrist. And you can make really long ones where you drag it out, kind of like we did with those flower petals. So, you know, it could be a really long leaf, or it could be like these little short flicks of your wrist. You could also go in reverse and start with a big fat, let's see if I can get the angle right so you all can see, kind of a big fat brush stroke where it ends small. So once you get the hang of it and the feel for the pressure of your brush, you can start mixing it up. And leaves are one of my favorite ways to mix it up because you can play with angles and the length of it. You don't even have to you can just have just a straight brush stroke. And what I really love is how the pigment kind of travels to the edge of the leaf. And that gets, I don't know, I just think it creates this really beautiful look and feel of like this variation of color. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like that petal shape. You absolutely can do the petal shape, you know, where it's, you're playing with that pressure and you're getting that perfect little petal. But you could just do brush strokes, boop, messy ones if you want. Or you can go really, really thin and then press it down at the end. Again, you can work in reverse, press it down at the beginning and pull your hand up. You can have things be very light and airy, or you can have them very dark and saturated. So a lot of my leaves and vines kind of look similar, but oh my goodness, there's so many ways to approach this. You know, you can absolutely even tap your brush. So I'm just gonna kind of hold it and just go tap it. Just to start building really interesting little teeny tiny leaves along the branch or vine. This kind of, for me, there's lots of ferns here in Oregon. This has kind of that fern look and feel, but you'll notice I'm not doing anything tricky with my brush. I am literally just tapping it on the surface. So this is where the sky is the limit with leaves and vines. The one thing that I try to get away from in any of this process, because we are talking about loose watercolor flowers, is the only thing I challenge myself not to do is like draw something and fill it in. You certainly could, but I really think this approach is interesting and fun and a unique challenge for your brain to actually use your brush for those things. So instead of drawing something, which is what we normally think of, I think oftentimes when you think of creating, you know, a watercolor or a drawing and filling it with colors, you draw it out and then you fill it with color. And we're kind of doing the complete opposite, where we are moving our hands and our brush to create those shapes without having to draw it and draw an outline and fill things. So again, like you could just do these really messy strokes. It doesn't have to be the perfect pressure applied. And so what happens when you start adding something like this to your bouquet is it just brings it all together. So let me lower this a bit. I have sun shining in my studio right now, which has changed my lighting everywhere. I had it perfect. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is use this white space around everything to start adding leaves and vines. So I really, again, I like kind of an olive color, and then I'm also going to use the color black. Before I start, does anybody have any questions or want me to do this again on my scrap paper? Because I don't want to jump in if you're not ready. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna start adding it to my bouquet. So this is where I get really excited. So I really enjoy using movement and the direction of my vines. So what I'm going to start with is just adding what I would consider like a curvy branch around my bouquet. So I'm going to start tucking them in here and there. I'm going to add one here. I'm just going to go bloop. Excuse my sound. I don't know why I'm doing sound effects. It's like what it, it's what it feels like in my head. And I'm going to do one here the opposite way. So I'm wanting to kind of break up that space and have this movement. So I've got one going this way and I'm picking the opposite direction for the next one. Same thing. Same thing. I went off the page, which I kind of don't want to do, but it's okay. And I'm just, this is for me, just kind of laying out where my vines and branches are going to appear. And so I start with the branch. I'm going to do one here and I will definitely add more, but this is my beginning. This is just like the beginning. We'll do one here. And so you can see that the movement and the direction kind of plays along with what we have going on in the middle, at least for my brain and the way that I look at things. I want some sort of movement happening. And so I'm thinking of this again like a bouquet. There's oftentimes things, you know, poking out and shooting out from the other side and hidden beneath other things. And so I'm trying to recreate that in a more expressive way. So then I'm going to start adding leaves to my little branches and vines. And I'm going to change up. Some of them are going to be similar, but I'm going to try to do different versions. So this one's just like brushstroke leaves on that vine, a lot like those flower petal strokes. I'm not really getting them all perfect, you will notice, but there we've got our first little vine. And I'm going to go back down here, just kind of do the same thing, same scale, same general vibe as I did up here. Nothing too complicated. You will see I'm kind of, it's just like a flick of the hand or the wrist, which gets you that shape. I'm gonna work my way up to, let's do this one. So I'm working my way around everything with like the same general branch. They all kind of have, so far, they're kind of the same scale. They've got the same look and feel to them. So I'm just kind of scattering those around. And you're going to notice they're not perfect, which that's the whole point of a loose watercolor. If I wanted them to be perfect, I'd be drawing them out and filling them with color and shading them. I'm not interested in that. They're supposed to be expressive and not perfect. I am now going to go in with maybe some smaller ones. So I'm going to do that tapping approach. It's a lighter color of green, and I want just some smaller leaves. Just tap in the little edge of my brush. So now we've got some medium-sized, branches, and then we've got something with some finer, smaller little leaves happening, which starts to create this really interesting diversity within your bouquet. So I'm going to pull that in up here. So these two kind of play off of each other. And I'm just tapping my brush. Try not to, I am moving my, well, Elena, I'm moving my page only because my shadow is getting in the way, but I'm going to just tap, 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 tap.
We just like seeing your technique. Move the page, whatever you got to do. We want to see it.
And then I'm just gonna try to repeat it around. So I'm gonna do the same thing over here. And tap. And so as this is developing, it starts to bring a different look and feel. I want one more up here for now. So this is, I actually spend more time on my leaves oftentimes and my branches and playing with this white space than I actually do on my flowers, because I just think it's a fun way to bring movement into your little bouquet, to play with the space around it. You can kind of get really expressive and wild with some of the stuff you have. So I'm going to do, let's change these little ones sticking out. So I'm going to actually go with like a dark, I'm going to go almost black. And I'm just going to use this as the basis for building maybe like some really long ones. So kind of like that flower petal, but a little bit more expressive. Same thing. Just let it stick out, almost like it's like sticking out of the rest of the bouquet. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And I'm just using, you know, I don't feel like I need to go over the top of this. I'm just using this as just a way to kind of mark my space in the direction that I want to work in. And then I'm going to pull the same two little leaves up here. And so I'm starting to build the outside. So I'm going to add one down here. And I'm actually going to layer it over the top of this one a little bit. And I'm looking at getting creative with the direction things go, just playing with, you know, something going to the right, something going to the left, a little curve here and there. And so, I mean, this is like a nice amount of, I don't know, leaves, but I want more, like I want a lot more. So I'm just going to keep adding things as I go. I always like to find a balance between like not going overboard, but still kind of filling things in. And I like to think of this kind of the way you would of building a bouquet. You know, you start with your flowers and you put kind of, you know, that filler stuff in, and then you step back and look at it, maybe add a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start adding some more, and I'm going to try to find a nice push and pull between some heavier leaves and branches and then some lighter airy leaves and branches. So we're going to go here. And I'm going to take my time on these ones so that they're a little bit shaped a little bit more detailed than some of these expressive ones. And I'm okay with just layering, kind of going right over the top of some of my petals here and there. Do one more at the top. So see how that starts to change the look and feel of things? And then I'm just going to work my way around. So I'm actually going to pick another shade of green so I can just create some different shades. It's kind of tricky to see the colors on this camera, but I'm going to just pull in just a lighter green. Just this little clump of greenery, quote unquote, you know, in this corner, and do the same thing around my bouquet. So I'm just going to play with those thick and thin lines. And I actually don't have a plan for this. I just use my intuition. I don't think, okay, I'm going to have 5 of this kind and 2 of this kind. I just kind of go, okay, what does this need? This might need like a different, you know, like a thinner branch and some expressive leaves. So, you know, it can be easy to overthink this process, but I personally just like using my gut, just kind of playing with it, seeing what my eye feels like it needs. Again, this is how I like create an actual bouquet in a vase, where I step back and look at things. So I'm going to go do the tapping, something fine, tiny. And start adding it on. So at this point, do I have any questions before I continue to go? No? I want to make sure that I address anything anybody is like, wait a second, wait, what? All right, well, I'm going to keep building I feel like I'm just going to talk through what I'm thinking too, just so y'all can hear me, and you're welcome to work at the same time, but I am going to try to work through this so you can at least hear my thoughts. I like the movement of this, but I want to kind of create some that is shooting up. And I'm trying to have a light hand. It's hard for me sometimes even to have a light hand, and I'm going to go with some smaller black leaves, and I am literally just pressing lightly on more of the tip of my brush to get just teeny tiny ones. So when I start to add that greenery, I'm looking to create movement on the edges. This is pretty static and flat, but I like creating some kind of directional movement as I finish things off, because I don't know, I think this is like my signature floral bouquet. And for me, it just adds some visual interest to everything. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing up here. I feel like these two are bending in the same direction, so I want something going opposite. So I'm going to go the opposite direction. And this one, actually, I think I might just do like a leaf. There we go, sticking out. There's something right here. Sometimes just a few strokes, a few lines can be, you know, some kind of like a filler grass. I don't know. In my bouquets here with our vegetation, like a real bouquet, I like adding like these little grasses, that kind of thing, into a bouquet. And you can absolutely do that in your painting. And then I'm gonna go, I'm kind of running out of room up here because I don't have tons of space. I actually have more space on the sides. So I'm gonna stay away from this, and I'm gonna go into this. I've got a lot of great space right here. So I'm gonna kind of, and then I'll do my little, let's see, let's do another little. And sometimes just by using like a different color green for your vines and branches, you're able to, you know, create more of that visual interest. So you could do the same leaves over and over again, but doing them in a different color of green or different shades of those same shapes is going to break things up and just create that visual interest. So that's another way, if like you're not comfortable messing around with different shapes of vines and leaves, you could just do the same vines and branches in different colors of green to really create that interest. So, and what you can't see me doing is, which I'm going to flip to show me, this whole time as I'm doing this, my surface is right here and I'm going like this, like the whole So after I do a vine, I pull back and look at it. If I weren't teaching on camera, I would actually lift it up and look at it to just use my gut and my intuition of going, okay, there's some space there. Sometimes I will even squint and kind of go, okay, there's a lot of white space over here. Let's pull in some of that stuff from the other side. So that is the one thing you're not seeing me do while I am showing my hands, but I'm doing that a lot, to the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm really looking at this a lot. I should share that. So this side is a lot less dynamic, and I want to change that. So I'm just going to pull in some of these spaces, and you'll notice I like to hang on to some space. So I don't want to go overboard. Again, I want to find like this balance between pulling in some really interesting greenery and embellishments, but also, you know, hanging on to some white space here and there. Build off of this right here. Okay, I'm getting close. And when it comes to your colors, like black is a really easy way to create a lot of contrast and have a really thick dark line. So if for some reason you're like, oh, my greens aren't showing up and it's just not as dynamic, you know, using the color black is kind of a quick trick to pull in some dynamic color. I actually like using it in combination with green because I think the two paired together are actually quite beautiful. So I will layer a light color of green and I'll go black over the top like I'm doing now. And then it just looks like things are stacked. So I'm pretty comfortable with all of those wild and crazy leaves. And what I'd like to do to finish things off just a little bit is just go in with my brush and maybe add just a little bit of green here and there. So I like to hang on to that white space, but I do like to pull in just some little brush strokes of green. Again, it's super, the color, it just does not do it justice on this camera, but you're able to see that there's just some green smushed in here. So we're not looking to, you know, create these intricate vines that are connected inside the middle. I just will like to give it like a little brush stroke here and there, drop in some green just to pull the outside with those branches into the rest of the bouquet. And I don't want to overdo it because I like some of these little areas of space. You could absolutely fill every area if you want. Something about my brain likes to hang on to some of that white space. And then at this point, I'm going to pause and call it good at the moment, but I'm going to show you before we, you know, wind down in a little while later, how I can keep going over the top of this. So I know that was a lot, but do I have any questions at this point?
I think everybody's so entranced by watching you create and trying to practice.
I hope. Okay, so I want to give you all a chance because I don't want you just to feel like you have to work at super speed. I work at an unusual fast speed, and I think it's important to sit and just create without pressure. So I might start working on another blob while you all have a little bit of time and space to work. Does that sound good, Elena?
I think that sounds perfect because I think, you know, while they're creating, to be able to see you doing the strokes is super helpful.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm going to switch my water out because it's basically black. And if anybody feels like their water's getting gunky, just get yourself a clean, fresh, you know, glass of water. I'll be right back.
Okay. Is it helping you guys hearing her process? I love hearing like why she fills things in the way she does. I feel like that's kind of getting your bang for your buck, learning the why.
Yeah, sometimes the why is actually the most mysterious part, I think, of art, you know.
I agree.
Tracy says, yes, it helps.
Good.
I think it does too. Because you never know what's going on in an artist's mind when they're.
No, yeah, that's. So.
So when you're creating your flowers, are you thinking of a real life flower?
You know, a lot of times, so like these would be like, again, what I call a loose watercolor bouquet. And they are truly loosely based on all kinds of photography that I take of flowers and bouquets. And then I pick like my favorites and then I just repeat it over and over again. I almost memorize it so that I can just work off of it in more of a relaxing way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times you know, when I paint more detailed, which I enjoy doing just as much, where I will draw it out, you know, and fill it with color and really overthink, I usually have to draw from some sort of photograph. So I spend just as much time taking pictures of flowers as I do painting them, because for me, it's really important to be super authentic in what I do. So, you know, I have a garden, my mom has a garden. I spend all summer photographing anything and everything I can. You know, I go to like the garden nursery and take pictures of flowers. And then I have a database with flowers that I can always pull up for reference. So I don't have to be going like on Pinterest or Instagram to get my inspiration. It can just be from the stuff, you know, in my everyday life. So I do work from specific pictures. And then these types of bouquets are things that I'll then do from memory because I've done it so many times. And it's something I teach over and over again too. So, but yeah, I'm basing it on stuff that originated from something in my real life. Most likely my mom's garden because she's a way better gardener than I am. So yeah.
Very
fun. And it's fun to take, pictures of flowers and then see how you can interpret them, with those watercolors in different ways. It's kind of, I love that process. And who doesn't love a flower? I mean, flowers are so pretty. I mean, maybe there's people that don't like, I guess there could be people that don't like flowers.
Maybe if they're allergic.
That's true.
So this would be the perfect bouquet of flowers to give them.
Exactly. Like it's not going to make you sneeze or anything.
Right.
Are Jamie and Elena, are you all painting?
I personally, Jamie is not.
Jamie's not? Okay, because you're moderating.
Yeah.
Well, I am playing with other stuff all over my table, but
I did have other stuff all over my table, but now it's blank again, and it's calling me to pull out my watercolors.
I did do it last time, and I know that I need to practice.
I thought you did really good last time, Elena. Like really good.
Isn't that funny how I thought that was just not good at all, but I
thought it was wonderful.
I knew that I needed to practice and that I needed to get some muscle memory going. I feel like that's part of it. But
I think my issue too is that I only do stuff, every once in a while, and I'm not a continuous user.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I don't know where people are at these days with like a daily practice of something, because they're just, I mean, we live in such a, we want everything quickly, if my Amazon package isn't here in 2 days, I'm mad,
So. Aren't you tracing it as the truck drives down?
Exactly. But I think that can spill over into our creativity, where we expect, instant success. And, sometimes it does not work. It just doesn't work that way. It takes a little bit of time and
very
practice.
True.
Yeah.
And Sabrina says, I think I might like doing the leaves better than the flowers.
I love the leaves are my favorite, Sabrina. I in fact, I have I have all these journals of my little practice, but I just fill pages with leaves and branches because I love them just as much as the flowers. Wow. And I do them in different colors, just to practice what you can do with your brush. So I agree, Sabrina. Leaves are my favorite. I feel the same way.
I love your practice journal. That's so fun.
Yeah, I have. I mean, you'd probably think I was crazy, but I have probably at least 100 journals in here that I'm surrounded by that just over time, I just practice and practice and practice. And then I'll go, okay, let's try this vine in the color purple over and over again and just see how it looks, So that's how I make discoveries too about what I might do next or what I'll teach next, or, it's kind of fun. See, so I practice too, all the time.
I bet.
How you get the muscle memory going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And we're all just kind of needing a journal filled with leaves. We need to be creating our own journal filled with leaves.
You absolutely could.
That sounds like a plan, Elena. I think we need to start.
Okay, you're on it, Jamie.
I'm on it. I need to find a journal in this mess of a craft room.
There you go.
Do you guys still have your building or your venue, or what would it be called? Warehouse or?
No, I know that place was so awesome. No, when I got pregnant, I was looking for a new venue. Me and Renetta went and looked at, so many places.
Yeah.
In the end, everyone was like, are you sure you want to open another space right now? Like, you're pregnant and you don't know what your life is going to be like when this baby comes, and he was such a long journey.
Yeah.
And it made so much more sense to just wait. And then when I was ready to start again, we got shut down. We got locked down. So
I guess it's probably a good thing that you weren't responsible for like rent or something or building. Yeah. Jeez. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Our landlord was amazing. I mean, they would have probably helped us out, but nonetheless, so much less stressful, especially with a little child at home. And so, no, we don't have the space, but we have the ability to gather online right now. And that is just the biggest blessing.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, I guess with events, like you can always rent a venue, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes.
That makes sense.
Opportunities are, everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about being able to do it. I'm just worried about, or not worried. We're just waiting for when we can.
Yeah, totally.
When is this going to be an okay thing to do?
Totally. Well, it sounds like California is going to be opening up sooner than other places.
Oh, it's amazing, but that's probably the truth, because holy cow, like, I don't know. We're really lucky where things are happening here.
Yeah. So I'm doing one now just while we all work with just 2 or 3 colors. So just blue and purple, just to show you all that you don't have to do like every color of the rainbow, that you can play around with like 1 or 2 colors. So that's kind of fun too.
I know that's one of the things about the online class is you can't look at the students to see how they're doing. You rely
that's tricky. That's a tricky part. Yeah.
And you're relying on them to chat, but they're like, well, I can't chat because I'm in the middle of this and I got to stop and type.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard.
So unless they're struggling, there's no chat going on, which is great and also counterintuitive as a teacher.
Yeah.
Or even as an event coordinator, like I'm sitting here going, okay, everybody's good, right? You guys still there?
Yeah.
They're just, they're doing their class.
Yeah.
You said no talking is better than a bunch of questions. So.
Right.
That's true. Yeah, that's what's so tricky about teaching online. So I do like streaming on my Patreon, and then I do my online classes are all pre-filmed and edited, and people can work at their own pace, and click on the video when they want. And then I have all these tips and little step outs for them. And, when I stream with my Patreon community, like everybody's working at the same time and they're so quiet and and I'll go, is everybody okay? And they'll lift up their work. And I'm like, oh, wow, you guys are doing great. But it is it feels different than like filming classes and then, having all this canned content. I don't know what I like better. I like both of them, I guess. It's all fun, but it's all fun and creative.
I think I'm just mesmerized by the way you hold your brush and the way you paint, and
Thanks, Jamie.
It's just fun to watch.
You're gonna make me feel good, because like everybody in my life could care less when I do this. They're like, oh, there goes Mama painting again. Oh, nobody cares.
Well, that might be because you do it every day.
I know. So that makes me feel special. Thank you.
You are special. Everybody is special.
It's funny. Yeah, my daughter is so used to me. It's weird. I mean, we have such a non-traditional life, and like I'll be doing something, and I'll go, you know, my husband will go, "Where's mama?" And she'll go, "Oh, you know, she's just painting something." And, you know, I'm doing something really important that feels really creative. And it's just like a side thought because it's just normal life. She's painting our house. She's painting flowers on the outside of our house. Like, whatever.
Now, do your kids paint as well?
I just have one daughter, and yeah, she's super creative. Like she's actually a really good artist, but she doesn't want to be an artist, which is fine with me. But yes, and I've let her and like, you know, set up opportunities for her to create since she was like 1. Like I was pulling out the art supplies when she could, before she could walk, just so she was comfortable around it, you know? And so now at this point, when she's in my studio, she like, oops, I just turned off my video. She like walks in my studio and goes to, I mean, she's allowed to use any of my supplies except for like the ones I'm using for a class. And she just goes for it. Like she was painting a big canvas of a horse the other day. And it's really cool. I think kids, like in school, like you are given permission to create. And then there's a certain time when you can't, or there's rules attached to it. So I feel like she's an experiment because she's been given like free reign and she's allowed to make a mess as long as she picks it up. She's allowed to mix weird materials. Nothing is a waste as long as she's messing around with it. And yeah, so but if you ask her, if people are like, "Oh, you're such a good artist, are you going to be artist like your mom?" She's like, "No, I would never be an artist." I'm going to be, right now she wants to be like a horse trainer or something. She flips up. She wants to be either a writer or a horse trainer. So, you know, she's like, thinks the idea of being an artist, she's like, "No, my mom does that. I don't do that." So it's kind of funny. It's actually really funny.
That is really cute.
Yeah. So it's kind of a, but she might just end up being an artist. Who knows?
Right? You never know, especially at that, you know, especially at 9.
I know it. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. She also loves like songwriting. So she writes all these like really weird, they're like super dark, like emo songs though. I'm like, what? Who is this child? Like, what? It's kind of funny.
But at least she's got the ability to create. And I think that's
and that's what's important in life. I think so many people, the first time, you know, a teacher tells them like, "Oh, that doesn't look right." It's so easy to like never make art again, you know? And I think if we can let our kids be creative, they at least understand what the creative process looks like, you know? And
I completely agree.
You could be creative with anything, honestly. That's my opinion, but okay, it's 4:26. How is everybody
doing?
How's everybody doing out there? Okay, tell me. Hi, Tommy. How is everybody doing? Are we alive out there? Is everyone doing okay?
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Hitomi. I love the chit chat too. Sabrina's good.
I gotta grab.
Well, like we said earlier, hopefully everybody's having too much fun painting and busy to put down their paintbrush and get to the keyboard.
Yeah. It's funny because when I teach live classes in my studio, there is like a ton of chit chat. So it goes in like waves where like you can't even hear people, like it's so loud, you can't even hear yourself talk. And then suddenly people get really into what they're doing and like it's silent for like an hour. And then I'm like, okay, is everybody okay? Are we okay? Why aren't you talking? But then when they're talking, they're not it's interesting. It's, you know,
right.
Chit chat's fun, but sometimes you just want to work.
Tracy says, "I'm busy," so that's good. And Gina says, "Coming along slowly but surely." Well, that's really good, Gina. If you have any questions, you know, just let us know. So besides these free-form flowers, is there another class that you tend to teach quite often?
What do I teach the most? I mean, I teach a lot of art journaling classes. So people tend to come to me when they need like permission to let go and be messy. So I teach a lot of art journaling, a lot of drawing classes, lots of flower classes are usually are the ones people want the most from me. So lots of flower classes. But I do a lot of drawing. So lots of sketching and drawing flowers, and people are usually really intimidated by drawing because it's another one that takes practice and it feels uncomfortable throughout the whole process. But yeah, I have, oh my gosh, I have so many classes, but the classes I teach in my studio, I have a flower retreat. I have an ocean, because I live in an ocean town, a beach town. So I have a whole ocean retreat where we do beach combing and hiking and art journaling along the way. And then I have a painting class that's really popular here. So I kind of do a little bit of everything, but the flowers are what people enjoy the most. And you know what, the flowers are actually, I have found a really great introduction for people that haven't made actual art. So I have a lot of like crafters and quilters, fiber artists come to me to take classes because they haven't yet made like art. And so flowers are like a great introduction because it's pretty accessible. Like we all know what flowers look like and it's not super intimidating. So yeah. So I have, oh my gosh, Jamie, I have so many classes. It's kind of crazy actually. So many.
Tommy says, I just like listening to you chatting while everyone is painting. It's comforting.
Okay. It's comforting. Aw.
Well, I kind of understand because you're kind of in your own little world. You're working on your paintings, but it's not completely quiet. You can kind of hear a little bit about Alisa's life and about whatever I feel like talking about, right?
Totally. Yeah. What should we talk about, Jamie?
I have no clue. I mean, do you guys have any animals or horses or?
We don't. We were gonna get a dog this year, like right before COVID hit. We were gonna get a puppy and like a rescue puppy, and then we were like, okay, let's just pause. Let's pause everything. So we have no animals, and my daughter is such an animal lover. She wants a horse, but I'm like, I'm sorry, we are not buying a horse. Like, I feel like a lot of kids want horses.
Where would it live?
I don't know. We have a really big backyard, but not that big. So someday when it gets a little bit better out there, maybe she can take like horseback riding lessons, and then, you know, we go from there. But during COVID, that's been like her passion, is like all things horses. And of all the animals, I'm like, couldn't you have passion for a hamster?
I was thinking goldfish. Goldfish.
Exactly. So yeah, we don't have any animals at this point.
Well, a dog is a good start before a horse.
That's what I think, right? Like it's good practice. Yeah, we'll see.
Do you even have any stables close to you?
We do actually. We have stables actually pretty darn close. So there is the ability to do it, but I first want to make sure she actually will stick with it, because it's just so much money even to take lessons. So, it's so funny because my husband and I, like, we don't really, she's a huge reader. Like she's like this avid reader. And we did not have horses growing up. My husband or I were not into horses. We could seriously care less about, I mean, horses are cool. So her interest came from reading. And then this interest turned into like obsession. And now it's turned into like, I'm going to get horses at some point. I'm going to save my allowance. And we're like, what? No. So it's kind of, it's become, so we'll see.
Oh goodness.
Maybe
Hitomi says hamster or fish.
Exactly, right? Or maybe a kitten or something.
Yeah. Well, a kitten roams around the house. You can't keep it in one, location.
That's true.
So
so
you get to think of that one too.
We'll see what, we'll see what happens. It's a big responsibility that I don't really want any part of having to be the one to take care of something. So at this point, because I'm so busy with my husband and I, we have like a totally, like, he is the homeschooler, he's the chef, and I'm the person who works. And so at this point, I'm like, I will not take care of a horse, of a goat, of a dog. It's between you guys at home. I don't want any part of it. So.
No, that's true. And Hitomi was saying, although I did post that pic of a guy with his mini potbelly pig on a leash.
Those are cute.
It was.
Those are
really
so cute.
picture. It was.
I mean, they're supposed to make good pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you have a big
They're
yard?
supposed to be good pets.
Alyssa,
We have a pretty big yard.
Yeah, so you could have a potbelly pig.
We could have a pig. We couldn't have a horse, but we could have a pig. We could have a goat or something. But I feel like I'm going to end up being the one taking care of everything. So, I just already can feel it.
No, you know.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right. We don't even know.
My daughter is. I know. I feel like I'm in this whole like take everything one day at a time mentality because I don't want to get my hopes up for something. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how next week feels and then we'll go from there. Right.
I tend to live life like that. Wake up every day and see how I'm feeling. And, at least I wake up alive. That's what I think. And
I know. Well, that's something to be thankful for, right?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I mean, if there was ever a time to truly appreciate that, oh my gosh, it is now for sure.
Very true.
For sure.
Well, luckily my life didn't change too much with COVID because I was already pretty much an, at home person, but
yeah.
It did screw things up a little bit, but such day by day, one thing at a time.
Yeah, I know that's how I feel too. I feel like when I really like zoom out, I'm like, okay, we were already in a pretty good situation, but it does feel weird for just the world to feel so weird. Like that is what has thrown me off. Everything feels so weird, but okay.
So Alyssa, I wanted to just, let's see, check in. Is anyone finished with one sheet? If you would like more one-on-one feedback, you're welcome to raise your hand and we will bring you on. If you want to ask Alyssa specific questions, because we have time and I think it's nice to get, if we were in person, Alyssa would be walking around and you could be asking, he could be giving you feedback on your actual piece. So if you would like feedback right now, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you on camera and you can show Alyssa and kind of ask her questions. But if you're just kind of working away, then feel free to do that. No pressure whatsoever. But if you'd like,
no pressure. And I'm also, sorry, Elena.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and then I'm also like, it's 4:37. I kind of have a couple more things to show, but I do want to give them enough time to work through. So there's a bit so that if we do share at the end, we can talk about stuff too, the way we did last time. So I just have one tiny little last thing after we're done working through, but I would love to give feedback if anybody's at a point where they're like, okay, what do you think or something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you've been practicing doing a stroke and you're still struggling with it, maybe, Alyssa, I love that you could say like, okay, if you just try doing this,
100%.
kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
That's a really cool thing to be able to get. But if people are just practicing, we want them to just practice and not feel any
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But maybe when you finish filling your flowers up there,
Yeah, mine are, I'm just not killing time, but I'm making use of my time. So
Yeah.
if people want to look up and see me doing something, they can, but I can stop at any moment. So
Yes.
Tony says, I'm loving the blue themed flowers. Alina should do the blue flowers to go with her blue clock from Anna's class.
Yeah.
ooh,
Tracy
I'm working.
says, I know, right? Tracy says I would call it practice. Yep.
Yeah, it's
That's what you guys are
definitely
doing.
practice time.
I don't have anybody raising their hand, so I think everybody is, just chugging along and doing pretty good. So if you want to go ahead and continue, Alyssa.
yeah, I'm gonna let you all work. I'm gonna finish up this, and then I'm going to just show you a couple of last kind of touch up things you can do. So I'm almost done with this, so
Yeah.
I will just finish it up.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
You have to, because I'm curious as to where it's going. I love it.
Well, I get a little obsessive where I'm like, I have to finish.
Me too. We want
Like, I'll be right back, you guys. I have to finish. Yeah.
Tracy says I haven't finished my flowers.
That is okay. And last session when we did this, there was a lot of people that had made it like halfway through their bouquet. And then like a week later, people shared on the Facebook group and they'd already done like 3 or 4 of them after they finished. So, you know, it's so flexible. The sky is the limit with this. You know, again, this is really different from some of the classes where you have a kit and you work through things. This is kind of more up to like your creativity and, you know, practicing and honing, you know, the skill of just, you know, using that brush even might take a lot longer than our 3 hours, you know, and that to me is exactly the way it should be. So I want everybody to know that coming from me, I wouldn't expect it to be any other way, to be perfectly honest. Okay. Okay. So we have, let's see here. Elena, is Devin with your mom?
Yes, but he won't be tomorrow, so it's going to be a little more hectic.
Interesting. It'll be interesting.
Yes, a little more interesting, but he's with my mom right now, and you know they're obsessed with each other. So,
That's
and he
so
has
cute.
started. He has hit the phase where he cries if I leave.
Yeah,
He
that's
never
always
did that
that's
before.
fun.
It just started, so I'm like, that's right. He loves me.
That's a fun phase. Okay. Is everybody going to be okay if I show you something right now, or would you like a little bit more time to work on your own flowers? It's fine. Okay. I don't want to distract you because if you're in the zone, it's really special to be in the creative zone. I don't want to like interrupt and push you along, but I do. Okay, go ahead. Good. Okay. But I do want to show you. So this would be, you know, here's all my samples. Like there's all the loose watercolor flowers. So I just want to show you how you can continue going and going on these in a different way with different tools and materials. So I know somebody had asked, like, what do you do if things are too dark, if your blob is too dark? I know if there's some of you who get through this whole session and you're like, I cannot use this brush. I'm done with it. It's bugging me. I just want you to see that there's so much flexibility and so many options. So, you know, something like this, I can't help myself. Like I want to keep going. I want to draw over it and use different tools and materials. I actually want to cut it up and mess with it in a different way. So I just want you to hear me say that a lot of times these types of surfaces don't need to be something that gets hung on the wall or framed. It can be turned into something else or transformed. And so even though we are using just our set of watercolors and that brush, I do want to end things with these surfaces, showing you just how you can take it a step further tomorrow, the next day, 2 weeks from now, if you want to play around with space and these surfaces with even different tools and materials. So I just have a couple of my favorite pens. You all do not need to do this along with me. I just want to kind of show you as we wind down, you know, what my brain wants to keep doing or fix things that don't feel right for my brain. So just know that, you know, your watercolors are going to do the job for what we've done, but you can keep going. So for the person, I can't read, I can scroll through here, who felt like your blobs were too dark. If you have areas that are dark, you can absolutely go back in with different supplies. So I've got one of my favorite white pen. Is that okay if I share different supplies in this, Elena?
Of course, of course.
Okay, I just want to get people inspired if they want to grab different things moving
please.
forward. So like my favorite white pen are these Uniball pens. This for me is way too dark. Like I already look at this, I'm like, oop, too dark there. But I can like play around with, you know, it being so dark with adding something lighter and brighter to it. So instead of using that brush, I'm using a pen to do the same exact thing, but I'm using a white pen, which automatically just brightens up that dark area. So if for some reason some of your flowers feel too dark, or you're like, oh, these are too, you know, saturated or muddy, you can use different supplies to even go over the top of these. And you don't have to do, you know, you're not like creating a masterpiece going over the top, but you see how quickly that changed things? Like it completely changed the look and feel of those darker areas. And so then you can really make it work for you, where you can use anything that's dark as another way to create a layer of contrast. And so I'm just doing little lines coming out from the center because that's the easiest way to add like a simple detail. But all my purple is quite dark. So I'm going to use my white pen just to lighten up those purple petals, just to transform things. So again, it was fine before this. This is something I would have stopped, but I'm just showing you so you can see how you can keep going. You can take it further if you want to play around with different supplies. So I'm picking all the purple petals and doing the same thing so that there's some cohesion in there. You know, see, it's so subtle, but I've just really quickly lightened things up. Same thing you can do with a black pen. I like to start coloring things in. So, you know, maybe you want to get rid of those blobs. Again, you don't need to do this. I'm just showing you different. I don't want to confuse anybody, but you know, you can start playing around with space and start shaping petals within that space. And so this is something I absolutely, this is like Zen for my brain, just starting to color in and color over the top of stuff. And I'm just using, I think this is like a Tombow brush pen. You can use any kind of marker. You can start adding color or contrast to things and see how quickly that changes it. So I left all that white space, which I love. I love keeping some of that white space, but you can start playing around with, you know, outlining things, coloring things in, and it takes on a completely different look and feel. Watercolors, what is so cool about watercolors is that you can layer over the top of them with all kinds of different supplies. So you can use markers over the top of them, colored pencils, you can use ink, you can even layer over the top. A lot of times I'll go back in with some white acrylic paint and just add little drops of white paint here and there. That's what I love about using a great set of watercolors, is that it gives you this foundation to layer and keep going with different elements. You can use it as the foundation for even more. So I see how quickly that changed everything. It gets things to pop. You can also correct things. So this is like a super wonky rose that's a little bit oblong. I can go in and fill in some space and get it shaped a little bit and play around with, you know, maybe the edge of a petal here and there. It's just a fun way to take a surface and transform it. This is also a fun thing to do with surfaces you might not like. So if you've got some experiments that you're like, ugh, this is just, I'm not liking this, grab some pens, grab some markers, see what you can do over the top of it to transform things. This has another tip on the other side, you can start outlining your petals. So, you know, there's just no rule that says this needs to stay as is. And, you know, my biggest goal whenever I teach is just to empower people to get creative after class is over, where you just keep going and discovering your own voice and your own way of doing things. And sometimes it doesn't look the way that like I've showed you in class. Sometimes it looks like taking it even further in your own unique creative way. So really quickly, you can change the look and feel of those flowers just by outlining things with different pens. You can doodle over the top. And by, you know, like by doodling, I mean just kind of adding lines or little silly marks or squiggles. You're not trying to capture things in a realistic way. You're just playing around with what's there and just messing around over the top of stuff. So this is going to transform things, completely look different, and give you the ability to kind of give it new life in a completely different way. And this is where, let me grab my stuff. Oh, okay, here we go. This is where a surface like this started like this. And I just kept going and going and going, filling in space in between and drawing over the top of things. And again, you could do that with your paintbrush and watercolors and not need a lot of supplies, or you can grab your favorite pens and pencils and literally just go for it. Layering over the top, sketching over the top, you know, giving things a completely new type of appearance. And this is probably one of my favorite things to do. And once I start, it's gonna be really hard for me to even stop this on camera because I want to just keep going and going, but it's a really fun, relaxing way to just work over the top of things. Hitomi is asking, can you paint a whitewash over a dark blob before painting the petals, or paint white petals? Yes, you absolutely can. So your white watercolors are gonna be pretty translucent, but you could probably wash out a darker area. Let's just do it so you can see. You know, you could give it, especially once it's dry, you could probably lighten things up a little bit. You know, not a lot, but you could also pull some of that away too once you wet it down and add white. So absolutely. And you could also grab acrylic paint and paint over the top of some of the areas if you want to lighten them up. I'm one of those people that is like, you can mix all of the different materials if you want, it will work. So yeah, this can lighten things up. You're going to probably have to go in layers to lighten it up, but absolutely, absolutely, you can go back into things and lighten them up and kind of fix them or rework them. You're welcome. And use different supplies. I think so often people get caught in feeling like, okay, I'm working in watercolors, I'm not supposed to do anything else, or okay, I don't want to break any rules. I say, let some of these be like the foundation of something new and get creative with some of those surfaces. And these are great to use, especially those experiments, especially practice pages, where you can play around with different materials over the top and see which ones you like. You might go, whoa, I really like drawing with a white pen over super dark blobs of color. And that might be your thing. You know, that might be the thing that really catches your eye or inspires you. There's so many ways to approach it. And I feel like even though the whole point of this class is creating a loose watercolor bouquet, I just want you to see that this can actually be the beginning of something totally different, totally new, and kind of give it your own look and feel and create your own style when it comes to this approach. So I'm going to grab one more thing just to show you all the potential. 1 second. I'm in the room. So
now,
yeah.
Alisa, does it matter if you're you said you had a Tombow pen to begin with. Does it matter if it's a water pen or if it's an alcohol marker?
It doesn't. So Tombow is water-based. Sharpies are permanent. I will grab whatever I have on hand. But most of the time I try to grab permanent stuff because I'm so weird. I'll just keep going and I don't want it to bleed. Anything that's not permanent is going to bleed if you continue to add water. But if it's a Sharpie, you could paint right over the top of it if you want to keep going. So I just grabbed the pens that were closest to me. But, you know, if you feel like you're going to keep layering or adding water, use something permanent so that it won't like dissolve and bleed. So if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to show you all too. Okay. So I have a variety of different scarves and products that I've made over the years. And I just want to show you how like you can take this basic concept and turn it into all kinds of stuff. So do you see that little roses? You see the circle of color with just the splotches on it. These types, and see like there's the, my brain's not working. There's the leaves and branches. This is literally taken from one of my practice pages when it came to a watercolor like little tutorial. And then I turned it into, you know, I photographed it and I messed with it, blew it up big and turned it into scarves. You can turn this stuff into fabric. And you'll notice when it does turn to fabric, look at all the imperfections in that. Like these are not perfect roses. They are not, you know, perfectly, you know, shaped leaves. They're very imperfect, which these watercolor flowers lend themselves to. But once you translate it into something else, it's so beautiful. It's really great to translate into fabric. So like Spoonflower, you can like upload one of your florals and turn it into something, yardage of fabric, or, you know, all kinds of different fabrics. You can turn it into, you know, cards or all kinds of different things. And I just feel like this is a great example of like, this was not set out to turn into a product. It was an experiment. It was just a really loose practice demo for a class that I just kind of fell in love with the colors. And I ended up turning it into a scarf design, and this scarf is sold over and over and over again. And so I think it's a really great example just as we wind down to show you all that like even this stuff that is imperfect or might not look the way you're thinking it should look initially may be able to have new life or be redefined in a different way. And I just feel like it's important to show you that, you know, even I didn't set out, like this was not something I would have thought would be turned into anything. And it's been one of my best sellers over the years. So I feel like it's important to tell all of you that, just because I know when you're learning something or when you're trying a new technique, it can be really intimidating, but sometimes you'll revisit that stuff and kind of go, ooh, like I like how raw that looks, or I like those imperfections. I'm going to see what I can kind of do with that. So I feel like
those
that's
are gorgeous. Absolutely.
Yeah, they
gorgeous.
turned out really pretty. I think watercolors really lend themselves to fabric and textiles. I think it's a really cool way to give them like a completely new life. So I always like to show people that when I teach this type of concept, because it's so easy to get caught up in thinking it needs to look perfect or it's not working the way you wanted. And these were literally class experiments turned into something completely new years later. So it's kind of crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions at this point? Or would you like to see me redo something or, you know, demo it again? I feel like,
I know it's so weird because honestly, like this isn't a step-by-step class where you're like, take this piece of embellishment and stick it here. It's not like a scrapbooking class. It's not even like a mixed media class. This is a watercolor class, and watercolor takes practice.
Absolutely.
It just does. So they're sitting there quietly, but engrossed in what they're doing, and you're not there to walk around and be able to see it. So it is different. It really is.
Yeah.
But
so Tracy, you want me to show the roses again? I will do it.
Okay.
Let me grab a scrap piece of paper. Okay. Let's do it. All right, I'm gonna get close. And you know what, this time I'm gonna do the roses in black so you can just really see my brush strokes as good as possible with the color. All right, here we go. All right, I'm gonna put my cup here. Look, I've got all these like rags that are just like sopping wet over here, and see if I can make. All right, so we are gonna go with some black. And I'm gonna drop my brush down and just spin it. I'm gonna go bigger. I spin around into like a little weird comma kind of shape. And then I'm going to take my brush where I left off and then work my way around it. And then I'm going to dip it once, tap it on the end, and then dip it in my color again. And I'm going to start on the opposite side and do the same thing and just pull it around. Dip it in my paint again and just kind of fill it in there.
Carrie Ann says, I'm saying good night now. It's 2 a.m. and my eyes will not.
Oh my gosh.
Thank
Good night, Carrie. It's 2 a.m.
She's in Norway.
Oh my gosh. Go to bed, Carrie Ann. Thank you.
Bye, Carrie Ann. See you tomorrow.
Bye. Okay, and I'm just going to keep going back around. I actually never have a big plan about where I'll start and stop. I just kind of try to start and stop next to the other lines that I've created. So just pulling my brush around. I'm going to do a big long line this way. We'll go far around, see how far I can take it. Okay, to there. And then I'm gonna dip my brush once, and I'm actually not gonna dip it in my paint. I'm just gonna kind of have a lighter. And just keep going and going. So I'm running out of pigment. I'll go right back over that line.
Tracy said, I see one problem I was doing. I was not pushing my brush out.
Yes, so that's kind of the trick, is pushing it out or pushing it down and then lightening up at the end. And you know, you could go really simple with this. Like you could literally just do a spiral and maybe once in a while push your brush down. You know, like that is truly like a rose. You know, it's just a spiral. And then you could start with a spiral and just kind of add some thicker edges around it. So that's a kind of, that can be a fun way to practice too, is to just do spirals over and over again. You know, and end your spirals with just some bigger thick lines on the edges. But what we're going for is kind of the look of a layered petal. So like a rose or a ranunculus. And there's just so many ways that you can do this. Again, when I teach this, everybody literally has a different look to their rose. And so you know, some people's lines are really thin, some are really thick. Some are like absolutely perfectly the same. Like there are some people I'm like, oh my gosh, that is like perfect. Like each size of petal is absolutely perfect. And that's what's cool about this, is you can put your own approach or twist on it. You know, you can have those little comma shapes a lot smaller, or you can have them really long like I did in this one. So I don't know. I hope that helps, Tracy.
Tracy said, thank you. All my lines are way too thin.
They're thin? Okay, so that means you just need to push your brush down as you're working. So you probably have a really light hand, which is great for thin lines. But if you want some of those thicker lines, you just need to practice, you know, going thin and then just smashing your brush down as you turn it. And it feels weird because it feels a little bit like you lose control, you know, if you have a light hand. But if you smash it down as you go in a circle, it's kind of a good way to practice, you know, that movement. So you'll notice, like, look, all mine look different with the way, you know, with my approach. So really quick spiral, short little strokes, as I pushed down. This one was longer, slower strokes. So, you know, just by altering your stroke or the pressure, you can completely change the look and feel of everything. So Tracy, if yours are thin, that probably means you're just needing to push your brush down so you can get that middle belly of your brush to kind of pick up that stroke, that thicker stroke. It's the advice that I would give. Anybody else have a question or anything they want me to show? Are we doing show and tell like last time, Elena, or?
Of course.
Okay, good.
If they're up for it,
Okay.
if anyone is ready to show, we would love to see what you've created. Please raise your hand and Jamie can let you in. Sabrina.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're on, girl.
I
So
have to make
here's
my.
the blue one.
Ooh. Okay. Oh, that looks so good.
And then
Okay.
here's the other one.
Oh, I love that one. I love your leaves.
Thank you.
And your
I loved
vines.
making
Oh, that's
them.
so pretty. That's so pretty. They're both really pretty. I love, you did two.
I did 3. So let me.
Girl, you should be proud. That's amazing.
I did this
Aww.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
for a
Yeah.
friend.
So you can do like wreaths and borders. Like once you get accustomed to it, you can use them
Yeah.
all sorts of different ways.
I'm
love
looking
it.
forward to practicing with this a
Yeah.
lot. I love
They
it.
look so good. You got those vines and branches are so good.
So fun. They're so fun.
I love it.
Thank you.
Some people like literally like pick it up and start going for it.
Yes, totally.
You know? And oh my God, Sabrina, those came out so good.
They're so
I'm
good.
excited. And, you know, I teach elementary school. So I teach my kids different techniques. And I had never done watercolor until Art Venture. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And I have just taken to it. So I think this is something that I'm going to delve into a little bit.
Absolutely. Yay.
And my green background and my special chair from teaching online for the last year.
Well, and you know what? Watercolors are such a great material with kids with any age because they clean up really well and you can get messy and really play with them without it being intimidating. So that's exciting. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. Super cute. Did anyone else want to come on and show their piece?
Danny?
Okay, Danny, you can go ahead and turn your speaker and your video on.
Oops.
You got it? There we go. What?
Are we there?
All right, can you see us?
No,
Okay,
camera's not on yet.
Where's the camera?
there we are.
There it is.
We can hear you. Oh, wait.
There we go.
Hi, you guys.
Come on in.
All right. Well, I'm Perrin,
Yeah.
and let's see. There you go.
It looks so good.
Flowers are better than the first time, and
I love it. Okay, I am particularly liking, I wish I could touch it. There's like 2 flowers on the left. There's like a red rose and then,
Yeah.
yes, I love those 2 flowers. They are so beautiful.
That's what I'm getting better at.
I love it. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
You
So
guys.
Perrin, do you have your piece from last time?
I do.
I remember it because it was good last time too.
But it's so good to like to see what practicing.
Yeah.
I can get it. Well, can you show it off first?
All right, show us yours, Danny.
Okay, so
I love it. Oh, those yellow roses are so pretty. I love it.
I was playing with that
Oh, the
one.
vines too are beautiful.
Started the second one in the blues.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Look, getting excited.
I need to work on my leaves, and I need to get a better watercolor brush because the one I have doesn't have a good spring to it. So
Yeah.
it just goes flat, and then it goes.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, yeah, no, I understand. And watercolor brushes, like it's a really personal thing. So even the size, you know, like you all, like I've been using a size 6, but you might like a size 9 or 10, you know, like it all is very subjective and personal, and they can make all the difference. A different brush can change everything too. So that, yeah.
So Danny, did you feel like after practicing, did you feel like you're starting to get like a little flow going?
Yeah, definitely better. This one was this was the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
So
good. The first
pretty.
time's good too. I love it.
So, and then that was the first time I'd watercolored ever. You were the very first class and the very first time I.
Amazing.
So it was.
I love it.
I come from. I've done a lot of decorative painting.
Mm-hmm.
So for acrylics, it's an entirely different feel.
Totally different. Yeah. Totally.
So, and I tend to be heavier handed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is to stay, light on the tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Practicing on this one, doing a lot of the scrolly things.
Yeah.
Stay up on the tip to just keep practicing up on the tip.
Yeah.
Well, and that fact I had no spring to it, but
acrylic and watercolor feel completely different. Like it feels like night and day to me. I mean, I shift between the two, but it is a completely different experience with even the pressure you put on your brush or, you know, how you move things. So I think for this being your first couple of times, like that's amazing. That's wonderful. So yeah, good job. I love it. Yeah.
Love it.
can't find
That's
it.
okay.
It's in a safe place.
It's-
We had a little fire here at the house last month, so things are a little chaotic.
oh no.
Crazy. I'm so glad you guys are okay.
Okay, second fire in 28 months, so
Oh my God.
No.
What is
we're all
happening?
good now.
Wow. Where are you guys at?
We're here in Tigard,
Okay.
but we were in Paradise, so we lost everything in Paradise.
Oh my gosh.
Whole town was lost. We were leveled.
Yeah.
And so we had moved here, and then we had construction people doing power washing. You'd think that would be safe enough.
And it started a fire?
It did. Their equipment got too close to the cedar siding and started a fire. So my house is in chaos right now.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad it's okay.
Everything's fine, but life has been a little
fire, a lot of smoke.
fire. So much weirdness in the last month.
Oh no.
But we're really glad to join you because this is like a little art therapy going today.
Art therapy will go a long way with stuff like that. So that's good. Oh my gosh.
Glad to spend time with you again.
Yeah.
Did it both times.
And you're in Tigard, Oregon?
We are.
Oh, you're close. So you're close to me. We're in Seaside. We're in Seaside.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So hi, neighbor. Stay safe.
Okay. Well, when pandemic is over and you're doing classes again, well,
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime when it starts back up. Yeah.
all right. Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thanks, Danny.
Bye.
Thanks. All right. Well, we don't have any other takers right now for showing off their goods, but
That's okay.
Alisa, here, I'll come on so you're not lonely. Like now I'm folding clothes.
I thought you had a little blankie.
I know, I miss him. No, no, I'm folding clothes.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I'm just so in love with your process, and it is different, this kind of a class rather than like the mixed media classes, because it's step by step. And okay, now we do this and now you do this, and there is design involved, but it's not something that you have to practice.
Yeah.
And this is just really learning. So
Yeah.
it's different, but then when you see the end results, and I know people will post their pictures. So let me take a picture of you right here. Hold up your piece, Alisa. Hold up one of your floral pieces there, and I will post it so people can.
Okay, one sec.
There. Yay, cheese. So I'll post that up there, but honestly, Alisa, you just learning your process and just hearing you go. I know it's weird to just keep talking to yourself for the most part.
No, I'm used to it. I stream all the time, so I'm totally used to it.
Yeah, but honestly, we're sitting here totally listening to your process, and oh yeah, of course it makes sense to stick a little bit of green in there, but yes, keep the white space and that kind of stuff. So absolutely so inspiring.
Yay, I'm so glad. And I do feel like everybody out there listening, this is something, it is again, the opposite of a kit. A kit, you make it, you're done. But this is something that literally you can take with you over and over and over again. And I'm telling you, these, like the set of watercolors, I will have one last me for a whole year. And so you've got the supplies and just the basic foundation to just go do it over and over and over again. And that's what I like about the art making process. Like I love art and I love craft and mixed media stuff. I love kits and projects where you all make the same thing. This is something that's going to look different from everybody else's, but it's like a concept that you can just run with, with your creativity. Even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable at first, you can absolutely take it like super far over and over again, which is so cool. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Perrin found his picture, so he's going to post it online. But Hitomi said that, she just moved.
Yeah.
She couldn't find, or she put all her kits in storage, but the one thing she kept out was her watercolors because she's
yay, that's so cool. Yeah, they're
know?
easy to take in. You can toss them in your bag and go, and you've got like your little studio right there, which is so cool, So, I like it.
It's fun. So thank you everyone for watching for Encore, and we will be back tomorrow morning. Alisa, thank you. We will talk to you soon.
And make sure if people post in the, I will be checking the Facebook group. So if you post, I will definitely be watching and liking. So yeah.
I will be creating a post and then people can add their pictures.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Alisa. Bye, Jamie.
Bye.